The Shining is 88, which, I mean, what do you think is Kubrick's best film? Because, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think it's The Shining.
No, I don't either, but I think Kubrick is one of the only filmmakers on this list who have multiple pictures. Kubrick has, and I apologize to
He
the listener.
better have something above this, like Dr. Strangelove.
I don't think Strangelove made it.
Fuck.
I think Barry Lyndon did, which makes you happy.
Ah, Jesus Christ. Are you serious? Hello and welcome to the Super 70 Podcast. Special report on Sight and Sound. Wiktionary.org defines bullshit as 1. Feces produced by a bull. 2. Statements that are false or exaggerated to impress or cheat the listener. 3. Statements that are transparently or offensively false. 4. Statements that are intentionally misleading, whether true or not. 5. Statements made without regard for their truth or value. 6. A synonym of shit in sense of any stuff when viewed negatively or with vulgarity. 7. The Sight and Sound 100 of the year 2022. For example, did you see Sight and Sound magazine's list of the 100 best films of all time? It was real bullshit. Dave Anderson and I sat down with me after Fury Road and we discussed the future, fascism, and femininity. Then we went through the Sight and Sound 100 list to sort out what was interesting, what was surprising, and what was a tall, stinking pile of Jeanne Dielman. So the first thing that I want to get into before we get into like heavy Sight and Sound stuff, we have two topics. The first one is, who killed the world?
Oh, that was definitely not me.
Okay.
And who killed the world?
I know that we're reaching here. This is...
When you say who killed the world, you're talking about in the movie, right?
Yeah, but is Fury Road like a warning?
Oh, I'm sure some people read it as such, yeah.
And are war boys, for lack of a better example, oath keepers? And is Immortan Joe...
Sure, I mean, it could be oath keepers. It could be, those that engage in jihads. I mean, you could...
That's good comparison.
Blind loyalty, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where...
The Ayatollah...
there's
Donald Trump.
A zillion different... Yeah, I mean, there's a zillion...
If you choose to look at it.
No. It's just... There's a zillion different groups, whether it be any of those in particular or just humans in general, who will happily follow orders because they want somebody to direct them because their life has got no direction. Right? So is it them? It could be anything. I think that the point of that statement is probably purposefully vague, because you could read it if you're going to look at it from a really radical feminist perspective as, is men that killed the world, or is it men like these, or is it people like you? There's a lot of different ways to read it. And the fact of the matter is unclear when Fury Road occurs post-cataclysmic event, right? I don't know if it's 4 years or 20 years. Certainly not that, right? It's more likely somewhere between 4 and 12, I would think, right? Which means that the odds of one of the wives actually recalling precisely what was happening is probably close to nil.
Right.
Right, but it is one of those things where she is stating it as, well, of course, I was about to say close to nil, but I noted in the commentary, they seem to be remarkably well educated, so they had access to some sort of books and records.
Well, they have access to a lot. They have access to water, a hydroponic garden. They have access to an environment which makes sure that they don't have lumps.
Right. Now I'm just referencing way to gather information.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And to me...
Actually, that makes no sense.
No, it makes sense to me.
Really?
Yeah.
If you're Morton Joe, would you give these women any access to education at all?
No, you're right. Yeah, that would... Yeah, I get that. What I found profound, and I mean, it's a little bit different with me because you can see this coming a mile away because of my whole take on history. Mm-hmm. But Morton Joe has a ton of iconography, and he has a ton of rituals, and he has a reason, he has a cause, he has a scheme, he has a regime, he has everything that he has thought out. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's the water, whether it's the wives, whether it's the cave or the citadel. He has a structure in place, and everything has a symbol. Every symbol has a meaning. Every meaning has a purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And that is exactly, to a T, the image of fascism, which you knew that eventually I was going to bring up because you know how the way that I think. But,
yes.
You
are looking for that under every nook and cranny.
I am, and I don't find it everywhere, but I find it in Fury Road. When...
And I'm not disputing that reading.
But just like give an example, when Hitler would have a party rally, he would bring this very specific flag. This flag that was at the beer hall putsch in 1923. It was a flag that some of the Nazis who were shot by the Polizei that night died and bled on, like literally, like some of their blood got on this flag. So it was known as the Blutflag. And he would take that flag. Hitler would take that flag to the party rallies. Mm-hmm. In the 20s and 30s, and even when he was chancellor, and even when he was dictator, the Fuhrer, and he would hold that flag, and he would go regiment by regiment in the SS or the SA, and he would hold their flag, and he would touch the Blutflag and hold it in one hand, and then he would salute and he would shake the hand of the officer in charge of that regiment, and then he would repeat the process and go on and go on. So it was like the blood of the sacrifice of the martyrs would be transferred. Mm-hmm. To the standard of the standard being in a military sense a flag, or in a Roman sense the eagle, and so that everyone had this shared experience. And I see that a lot in Fury Road. I see the iconography has a system.
Okay,
and the system may be kind of hidden to us, but it's transparent to them.
Right? No, it's obvious. It's well thought out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get that reading, and I'm not going to disagree with probably any of these, readings.
Mm. Well, that's nice of you, because you know I'm right.
I don't know if I go that far, but I think that it's definitely one of those things where you've certainly put some thought into it and some observations that have got merit. And you may be right.
Well, and I think that...
I don't know if that's necessarily the objective of George Miller when making this.
I was just about to get into that.
Right.
That seems very far from Miller's mind, just because he's more interested in telling a story.
Right. I would imagine that it makes sense that he would hear a conversation like that and adopt that for the design purposes, but it wasn't the thrust or function of it to say, okay, this is a warning to you, the viewer, of fascism encroaching on the wasteland. It's one of those where it's like, okay, structure makes sense. In a situation like that, structure would be needed. Mm-hmm. And fascism, I'm not a fan of, but it is one of those things where if you're in a situation such as that, you could see where it may be the only way to make society work. Mm-hmm. Right? You couldn't have a democracy or even a democratic republic in those
the Citadel
specific in this environment.
It seems highly unlikely.
Yes, because everybody is going to do what humans want to do, which is take care of themselves. And unfortunately, in a situation such as that, the resources are truly.
But no, I see that. I mean, I don't think that that's something that Miller just sits down and we talked about this before 20 years ago with Starship Troopers about how much was this like innately Verhoeven's purpose in bringing up like the fascism he experienced as a child, and then how much of it was, well, he was just telling a story and he just sort of
and boy, these uniforms are cool.
Yeah, he just put those things in the way. I think that's perfectly valid.
My second
topic.
Okay,
so what's the point?
The point of Fury Road,
No, not the point of the movie, but your observation.
Well, my observation is that he just wanted to tell a story, and those readings came out as he was filming,
That
and
makes
he
sense.
even admitted, like, we're going to emphasize a lot of points as we go along as they appear to themselves.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think that's what he was going for. I think everything retroactively that we put into it is just our modern day observations and how they fit.
Well, I think that's probably true with almost any movie and art, right? And that's one of the nice things about it is that it's up to the viewer to interpret and how he or she sees fit, right? So I do think it's one of those things where that's one of the characteristics of that movie that really works is it's not beating you over the head with a quote message, end of quote, because message movies I inherently reject, and I'm probably not unique in that regard. And allowing the viewer to interpret it as they see fit is real appropriate.
Well, we talked about that before, and I don't remember what episode it was, but how we just did not like message movies.
No, I don't think anybody really does.
I mean, somebody said, I saw this great movie the other day. It's a post-apocalyptic vision, and it's filled with, like, these people who represent, like, MAGA heads, and then they're fascist. I would be completely uninterested.
Yeah, I'd be like, I don't want to see that at all.
Why? Why would you want to?
Right.
Even if you were some bedwetting liberal, why would you want to get in line to see something like that?
Well, we do like our echo chambers when we get involved in them, but you are automatically narrowing your audience regardless.
Horribly.
Yeah.
Horribly. So, it's a lot of reason why, Michael Moore in his heyday was just alienating a lot of people.
Oh, gotcha.
Or a lot of people who are, just to choose an example, are anti-Trump, don't watch CNN because they get enough anti-Trump type of, like you were saying, an echo chamber, right? They get tired of it. And I don't think that's why people want to go see movies. People want to go see movies because they want to be entertained. Right. If there's a message that comes along with it, I think that message is going to be better conveyed with a better story.
I mean, I think that it seems really rote and stupid, frankly. But yeah, that's the primary function of the movies, is to entertain, right? And even if it's something like Schindler's List, which you'd be hard-pressed to say that's an entertaining movie from a conventional definition. But it works because it is compelling and, to a lot of it, entertaining. Because my recollection of that movie isn't so much that, I don't know what percentage, you couldn't break it down by minute, is absolute tragedy and wrenching. But there's a high percentage of it which is actually very entertaining.
Yeah, I think it's about 80-20. I saw it on the re-release. My son and I went to go see it on the big screen. It was his first time. And I think I've seen that film like 15, 20 times.
Really?
Yeah. And, I mean, I think that only Spielberg could pull that off. The other one...
Yeah, he probably actually is.
Who wants to rewatch something on the Holocaust?
Apparently you 15 to 20 times.
But I'm a strange bird because I center on 20th
right, but
century
I mean,
German
you
history.
could watch Schindler's List 15 to 20 times, but how many times would you watch Shoah?
I've seen Shoah twice.
Okay.
I saw it when it was first issued on DVD.
Now, obviously,
and
the length is
going
going to play into it.
Well,
but
yeah,
still,
that's what is it, like 4 hours?
Oh,
6
I thought
hours?
it was longer than that. I mean,
I have it.
I think it's like 8 or 9.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah, but part of Shoah is also, and we have to be careful when you get into like Holocaust porn, is what people call it, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly there's a bad element, but there are certain elements of Shoah. So the interview and the way that Claude Lanzmann conveys Shoah in some of his interviews is just really, really, really good from like a narrative storytelling. Like, for instance, there's this guy who was a survivor. I cannot remember his name. If it escapes me. His job was to cut the hair of the women before they went into the gas chamber. He was a barber before the war. He was a Jew. And that was his job, was to cut their hair knowing that they were going to go in and get gassed. Well, a truckload comes in, or a trainload rather, comes in. And I don't remember if this was Auschwitz or Sobibor or Mauthausen or wherever it was. But his wife and daughter came in. And so he had to cut their hair and not tell them that they were about to be gassed. You should see this guy tell this story to Landsman, and Landsman put him in a barber shop in Tel Aviv. This guy wasn't a barber anymore. He was retired or something. But he's trying to tell this story. He's trying to cut this guy's hair. He's walking around. He's finding it very difficult to... And it's just his reaction and the way that he chooses his words and the way that Landsman is egging him on by saying, you must tell. You have to tell. If you don't tell...
then nobody will know.
A friend of he worked as a barber. He was also a good barber in my hometown. When his wife and his sister to the gas chamber.
Go on, you must go. You have to. Please. We have to do it. You know it.
I won't be able to do it.
You have to do it. I know, and I apologize.
Don't keep me long with that, please.
Please, let's go.
Taking in with Bex.
Nobody will know.
That was transported.
And so even though this is the second most painful thing you've gone through, it's your duty to tell. You have to tell. And eventually he tells how he lost his wife and daughter. It's absolutely gut-wrenching, but it is quite possibly one of the most interesting parts of Shoah.
Sure.
Does it make me want to just take it off the shelf and watch it right now? No, but I bought Shoah on Criterion because I know I'm going to watch it, probably not just again, but 3 or 4 times before I die.
Right, but is also, that's a documentary.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So there is obviously a different expectation from a narrative film than a documentary. But there's not a whole lot of films, even on the BFI 100, of which you or I may have our quibbles with, that don't have entertainment is the primary objective.
Right. Fury Road, I think entertainment is the primary objective. And that's its power. Now, moving on to something what we started talking about just before we hit record, which was you sent me a link to the Vinegar Syndrome.
Well, I sent you 2, right? I sent you one for the Vinegar Syndrome and one for Indicator.
And we were talking about how in the dying days of media, where I went to physical media, I went to Best Buy today to get like a USB cord. And in the back corner on the right-hand side, on just 2 or 3 shelves, were these things called DVDs.
I never heard of them.
I had to blow the dust off of them.
See, I'm pretty lucky. The Best Buys by me actually have a, relatively to that, robust stock.
It used to be like 1/4 of the store.
No, absolutely. And it was always a loss leader in those days.
Yeah. Yeah.
To get people in the store. But it is one of those where it's damned unfortunate, because physical media is going to be critically important in my opinion, because I'm living the streaming existence like everybody else, but stuff disappears. And some people, like our buddies at the Mouse, they will pull stuff, and God knows if you'll ever see it again.
Exactly.
So if you have a physical copy, it's tough to imagine them coming and taking it from you.
And we talked about this before, about my fear about Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, it's it's conceivable where you could see a future where it's gone.
Yeah. And on HBO Max,
I mean, it's not easy to find Birth of a Nation.
Right.
You can. And it is on physical. And I've thought about getting it on physical just because, okay, this is a piece of important film history. I don't know if I'll watch it more than maybe once or twice just to kind of look at it and say, oh, okay. But, I mean, it's not as good as Intolerance. I think most people at this point probably agree with that. But it is important. But the thing that's really nice with the physical media now is it reminds me a lot of the waning days of VHS and kind of the carving out of the niche of Laserdiscs, where you were getting a lot of films that were getting the deluxe treatments because the only people who were buying it anymore were collectors. That lasted about 5 minutes before DVD entered the market and really exploded it, which is part of the reason I think the 90s are the best decade in cinema, but we'll get to that one eventually.
I think that's the next special edition.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. But sorry,
But that's okay. We can digress before we dive in and get pissed off about French directors.
I don't know if we're getting pissed off about French directors.
I went on to Arrow last year and bought like $100 worth of shit on one of their sales, and Kino had one about 6 months ago, and I dropped like another $100. And
yeah, and Criterion's got theirs every.
Criterion's has theirs, and then I grabbed. Kino had one. $6 Blu-ray, The Quest.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen this.
I do not know it.
The kid from E.T. is in it. Elliot.
Henry Thomas?
3, 2, 1, go!
You loved him in E.T. Now Henry Thomas is back as Cody Walpole.
There's no brakes! He made it! There's no brakes! No!
Cody is an adventurer about to discover the secret of frog dreaming.
Guys, what do you know about a pond 5 miles east of Devil's Knob?
I want you to promise me you'll stay away from that pond.
Do you believe in monsters?
Son, for 20 years, I was married to one.
First you dance with the devil. Then you find out about Donkey.
Cody, just hang on. This is going too far.
That thing could be 1,000 feet deep, if there's a bottom at all.
I reckon I got about 3 minutes worth of air down there.
Henry Thomas from E.T. is Cody Walpole, whose search for adventure takes you to the depths of a legend. The legend of frog dreaming.
Yeah, and it was shot in Australia on a.
It all circles back to Australia.
Yeah, all ties back to Australia, and on a shoestring budget about this kid who thought there was a monster in this lake.
Mm-hmm.
And
this does sound vaguely familiar. Maybe I have seen it.
And turns out the lake. Spoilers. Turns out the monster in the lake is like an old mining crane that fills with air from some pipeline that's not used anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then the crane comes up out of the water and just looks like a monster.
Yes.
Yeah. And I remember seeing that when I was a kid and thinking it was like gold. I would never watch it again. I hadn't seen it in 40 years. But Kino had it for $6.
So you said, well, maybe.
Oh, I got it. And, if you go to the movies, it's like $12.
Oh,
so to own a Blu-ray, yeah. So to own a Blu-ray of The Quest, $6 to me.
Yeah, it's no. I mean, buying a blind buy makes a lot of sense nowadays from an economic perspective. I can spend $20 on this movie I've never seen before, or I can spend $40 to go see it in the theater with my $18 ticket and my popcorn and my drink. So it's kind of a no-brainer to really engage in it just from an economic perspective if movies are your thing.
Yeah. I also got DC Cab.
DC Cab. They've got class.
Where to, baby?
Nowhere with you.
And they care.
You charge Mr. and Mrs. Tomatsu $195? They had a lot of luggage.
Two.
We're the worst company in town, and we know it. Get out of my cab, I'm rich. You don't have to shut us down. This company is closed, pending further investigation.
Make an investment in DC Cab.
If I wanted responsibility, I'd have been a damn sex surrogate.
Fasten your seatbelt. Because they're back on the street. DC Cab.
Okay, I'm going to sit here and stare at you for a bit. I've never seen DC Cab.
You haven't? Well,
I have not.
I know what you're taking with you tonight when you go home.
It better be DC Cab as opposed to syphilis or something, so okay. I pity the fool who makes me watch that. No, but I'm not seeing it, so I know of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to go on to Vinegar Syndrome. You know, the other thing, I don't know if it's Kino or another one of the Shout Factory, maybe. Mm-hmm. But they had one of The Fan.
Dear Miss Ross, I have finally worked up enough courage to write you. I am your greatest fan, because unlike the others, I want nothing from you. The only thing that matters to me is your happiness. I am a friend, and I am someone you can turn to in times of distress. But I know the time is now right. We will be lovers very soon, my darling. And believe me, I have all the necessary equipment to make you very, very happy.
You got a really raunchy letter from that weirdo fan I tried to tell you about.
I think she's taking advantage of you.
Sally, he's driving me crazy.
I recommend you fire. I recommend you fire.
What in God's name did you say to him in your letter? I don't pay you to upset my fans. You don't even know your fans. I'm the one that has to put up with him. He's the one that's gone too far. He wants to be your lover, for Christ's sake. What was I supposed to do, give him an appointment?
I want to touch you. I want to make love to you.
Just ignore him from now on. He's harmless.
Miss Goldman? My darling, it was over very quickly, and I feel glad because I never wanted her to suffer.
We're dealing with a psychotic, a potential killer.
Am I safe, Inspector?
Who knows?
He's after me now, isn't he?
The Fan.
Golly, yeah, I know I've seen that one. I've seen that for sale.
Yeah.
That sounds like more like a Vinegar. But, I mean, I think we are entering a new heyday of this boutique label where Indicator by Powerhouse out of the UK, Imprint out of Australia, again. I don't know if you've seen anything about their stuff, but they're releasing some just tremendous gems. And obviously there's Kino, which I think is pretty underrated and underappreciated by the general audience. Obviously those people who collect such things really like them. And Arrow's pretty hit and miss, but they really embrace the genre stuff, and the stuff that they embrace I really do like. And there's Criterion, which we won't even need to talk about because that's the standard.
Everybody talks about Criterion.
Right.
I remember texting you saying I just spent a shitload of money on Arrow, and you were like, "Oh, what'd you get?" I said, "I got Jake Speed." And you were like, "What?"
Yeah.
When no one can stop the terror, when everyone looks the other way, you need a hero. You need Jake Speed.
Can you handle an adventure
adventure. I've never had one before.
A paperback hero.
Sometimes you do things the hard way. Why? Reads better.
A living legend.
Sounds nice, huh?
In a lawless land, he's part man.
They say how to tend to vessels.
Part myth.
Such a big deal. Why haven't they ever made a movie?
And a gentleman to the end.
Are you sure you're trying your best? Halfway.
Is he real? Or is he fiction?
You're a Boy Scout. Refreshing, isn't it?
Jake Speed is both.
Don't be a sore loser.
Jake Speed.
And what else did you get? And I said, I got Remo Williams.
The adventure begins.
And you replied, you ... paid money ... for Remo Williams.
Well, okay, so it's a pretty terrible movie, but
America's top security experts have chosen this man.
Don't take any chances. This guy's a killer.
For a special mission. But first, he's got to pass one little test.
Speak English. Does your nightingale sing? Hold it! You move like a baboon with two corrupt feet. However, I think I can do something with him.
Goodbye, Mr. Crow.
Who's he?
No more Boy Scouts. Take a look at this. High-altitude reconnaissance probe.
Yes, we make that.
There is none. Doesn't exist.
These men will rob America of her might.
He won't be with us for much longer.
Unless someone
Relax.
can stop them.
Concentrate. This is not time for prayer.
Remo Williams. The adventure begins.
What are you watching? Your country's one contribution to the art. It's a soap opera. It is apparent to me that you know less than nothing. Place your hands behind your head. I did not say keep them there.
Before he's through, he'll learn to move faster than a bullet.
Excellent.
Not bad, huh?
Hear the heartbeat of an enemy.
John, I need to borrow him for a while.
And leave no footprints in the sand.
Some joker walks into one of my plants, snoops around, walks right out again, and now you're telling me he doesn't exist.
Across town, the man has found his head blown off.
Perfect accident. And you tell me he's going to get away with it, huh? And we can't stop him? You can stop him, son. It'll be my pleasure.
Now, based on the Destroyer novel series that sold over 30 million copies, America's favorite tough guy comes to the screen. In a movie big enough to hold him. Remo Williams. The adventure begins.
That doesn't mean it's not worth spending a couple bucks on.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to enjoy it, and I know because I haven't seen DC Cab in 40 years, and I fucking loved that.
You loved it?
I loved it. Adam Baldwin is gold in that movie. And how can you say no to Mr. T?
Oh, yeah, I don't believe that you're allowed to.
No, I think the niche DVDs, I hear a lot of people complain about Criterion being high.
From a cost perspective?
A dollar standpoint.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And, I get it, and it's just like anything else, if you don't want to pay that much, then don't.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Or, if you really want to spend wisely, then, you just buy a subscription to the collection on, the streaming service.
The Criterion channel. Yeah.
Recognize that stuff will be gone, but just enjoy it every month. But Criterion, it's cheap now.
Yeah.
I was buying laser discs.
Oh, my God.
I don't want to talk about how much money I spent on those back when that type of money was a lot of money.
I remember the Criterion had Goldfinger on Laserdisc.
Yeah.
It was like $150.
No, it was $100.
It was $100?
Dual discs were always about $99. Two CAVs. and the single CLV were $49.99 or whatever. But I mean, $100 back in 1992, you know, you're talking about 150 now, I'm sure. 125 probably.
But the strange thing was, like I wasn't against the price.
Right.
I didn't think it was overpriced.
You're just like, I just can't afford it.
Can't afford it. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a Corvette. So that's pretty good. I just looked over my shelf in here and I just pulled out a couple that I got off of sites such as those. Midnight Run.
I love to travel by train.
Oh, yeah? What do you think this is, a class trip?
A tough ex-cop.
Are you always this angry?
A sensitive criminal.
Oh, no. Come on. Cigarettes are killers.
Why are we running away from the FBI? Because I got to bring it back myself, otherwise I won't get my money.
They can't fly. They also suffer from acrophobia and claustrophobia.
I'll tell you what, if you don't cooperate, you're going to suffer from fistophobia.
They're seeing America the hard way.
Why would you eat that? Does it taste good?
At gunpoint.
Whoa, what did you do before you did this? What qualified you for this? He's gaining. No, get it. He's flying. Of course he's gaining.
Robert De Niro.
It is truly in your best interest to just relax.
I'm totally relaxed.
Charles Grodin.
$2, that's all you're going to leave? That's 15%. That's 13%. These people depend on tips for a living.
From the director of Beverly Hills Cop, Midnight Run.
Midnight Run, really, that's something I may want to borrow from you.
This is a brilliant film.
What's that?
Midnight Run.
Well, Midnight Run, I've only seen once, and I saw it in the theater, and I hated that movie.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And I almost fell asleep in it like 3 times.
What?
And I was in high school, and I'm pretty sure that it was in the middle of football season. Not that I was any good at football, but I was on the team. So I think I was just literally physically exhausted because I'm about the only person that I know who has that opinion of that specific film. So I know I'm wrong. But I went to go see it, and I was like about to fall asleep. I fucking hated it. I wanted it to end so badly. And I think primarily because I wanted to go to sleep. So I'm very interested in seeing it again. And it's just one of those I just haven't.
Yeah, you need to see that. You're going home with that tonight. For sure. Okay. I think another one, I don't know if it was the 2 Jakes, but I got the 2 Jakes over there.
Brought in money, opportunity. The war was good for L.A. Brought in money, opportunity, and more than a little greed.
Put the weasel in jail. Nothing else matters. Nothing else in the world.
How about $5 or $6 million?
Could I make a phone call?
Please.
Now the war's over, and people come here because they think the money's easy and the women are easier. That's a combination that's good for business. The divorce business.
I was honestly unfaithful.
Which, by the way, pays for my convertible, my country club dues,
Hell of a shot.
and my office building where I can shut the doors and not even hear the oil well pumping across the street. The war was good for women, too. Gave them jobs.
Oh, you're gonna make me do it, aren't you?
Money, and enough independence to double the divorce rate, which didn't hurt my business any either. After all these years, I've learned a couple of things.
Trick or treat.
The clients lie.
Say hello to Jake Gittes.
What's this?
It's a hand grenade. You ought to know that. You're a war hero.
The cops always think I'm lying.
How do you know he didn't have the gun with him?
Oh, I'd never frisk him before I let him walk in on his wife hanging on the headboard while some guy was slamming her into the wall, Lou. The lady in question reminds you of someone else. And marriage has made more liars out of men than golf. Of course, a guy can't live without golf.
The deal is you'll turn the wire over to me at the end of this round, or I'll have you killed.
Sure, the society crowd turns up its nose at mousing around and peeking through keyholes, but they're the ones who pay the most to see what's on the other side.
Come on. You can tell me. Blackmail. What are you talking about?
You tell me what the hell you think's going on here, and I'll tell you if I think you're right.
These days, people want to have it all. New cars, power steering, houses in the suburbs, speedboats, and instant cameras.
Oh, no, Kitty, how could you?
What's going on here?
How could you, Kitty? How could you with him? Not with him!
So now, it only takes a minute to see what a murder looks like.
Then what happened?
Usually happens when somebody pulls a gun. Everybody ducks. What I do for a living may not be very reputable, but I am. In this town, I'm the leper with the most fingers.
I don't know if I got that off of Amazon.
No, that could be.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of there. I think we really are entering a new golden age of this boutique stuff.
I hope so.
And a lot of these other labels are seriously giving Criterion a run for their money for not only value but interesting titles. When they were the only game in town, we all loved them, but you were kind of locked in. It's like, okay, if I wanted a special edition, of course, back then, a lot of the big studios were also producing deluxe editions, and that's unfortunate because when was it? It was probably mid-2000s where your Warner Brothers, your Paramounts, your Universals would really produce some top-notch special editions, and it wasn't strictly a boutique thing. But now, it's been, probably 6-7 years? I mean, you see less commentaries. You don't see double disc packages very often. And largely it's not the revenue generator, so they're not doing the investments.
Yeah, unless it's Marvel or something.
Even then,
like that.
their special features and supplements are usually pretty light.
Yeah, that's true.
But it is one of those where it's just opening a window because Kino Lorber, they put out some really good stuff. I mean, I picked up their Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I need to get the other $2 movies in the trilogy.
Well, when I was in grad school and I was in charge of the film collection and the so-called film department, we had more Kino Lorber than anything else on VHS and on tape. I mean, on DVD. And I remember somebody telling me, it's the poor man's Criterion, or it's the
discount,
the ragtag discount Criterion. And I saw so many gems on Kino Lorber. It was the first time I saw The General, the Buster Keaton movie.
Right.
It's the first time I saw, like we were talking about before, the Birth of a Nation, and Triumph of the Will.
Right.
And there was just a lot of stuff. There's another one from the 1920s called Different from the Others. It's a silent film. And Kino Lorber was a particularly from Weimar and National Socialist cinema. It was the only one that was putting stuff out. Haxen, they had Haxen out.
Oh, Criterion has Haxen.
Yeah, it's a double. And I don't know why Lorber just got into that niche, but they also did like the Italian neo-realist stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of that.
They've done some really tremendous work.
Yeah, so I think they are underrated. Even if you go on, Kino Lorber has a streaming service.
Yeah, that's right. But I don't subscribe, but I do know they have one.
And some of their stuff is free.
That I didn't know.
Black Sunday, the movie with the vampire movie with Barbara Steele.
Okay,
that's free on there. So I gotta watch that because there was an episode on some podcast that covered it, and I gotta watch that before I see it. I love Barbara Steele. I think she's at 8.5, she's just drop dead gorgeous,
right?
And apparently in Black Sunday, she pulls the performance of a lifetime. And I've seen her on Criterion documentaries talking about her working with Rossellini and Pasolini and people like that. Anyway, so Sight and Sound.
Yeah. So Sight and Sound.
Time to get a beer.
Well, definitely time to have a beer, and everybody's going to have thoughts. But, Sight and Sound is...
What is Sight and Sound?
Well, Sight and Sound is the publication produced by the BFI that, amongst other things, every 10 years does a poll of various critics and directors to create a list of the, quote, greatest films of all time, end of quote. And to a large degree, this poll, is why Citizen Kane is considered the best movie of all time, and I'm using finger quotes there. Whether it is or not is obviously a matter of debate, because to a large degree, these type of things are inherently silly.
Yeah, best movie. Yeah,
I think the BFI or Sight and Sound poll is probably pretty analogous to the Oscars, right? In that lists and award shows for art and entertainment are inherently silly because these are subjective judgments. So creating this canon via this list is inherently false because who knows what it is? Somebody out there, not me, even though I enjoy it, thinks Rad is the best movie of all time. We just know it exists. But it is one of those things where I know that Roger Ebert was the one who had said that the Sight and Sound, the BFI poll, was the only list of this type that was worth taking seriously.
Oh, wow.
And I think that he's probably right, because I know over the years, the different polls that occur, the numbers are growing and growing, but this is always the one that people will go back to and give some serious consideration to and evaluate. You know, the AFI poll, what was the last one, 2007?
Yeah, I think so.
And I really do enjoy it, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong, but it's very narrow focus, and there's a lot of things in there that you go, okay, that's not in the top 100 American films, because it is, you know, it's going to be narrow by its focus. It's only American films. And some of those I call question to, because, like, Bridge on the River Kwai is on there, and I just think that more of a UK film than a US, but whatever.
Yeah.
But it is one of those where this one is about the only one that throws that wide of a net, and they use, at this point, I think it's thousands. I don't know how many participants in the poll actually there are, but I want to say for the critics side, there's 2,500 plus. And what they do is they submit a list of 10, and then they tally up all these polls, and whatever ends up most consistently on these top 10 lists gets slotted, which is why for 95 you have 6 there that all tied at 95.
Right. Yeah,
and
Man
it's
Escaped.
On your computer, Man Escaped is kind of slotted into the 100 spot, whereas on every single one of mine, Get Out is slotted into the 100 spot. So it is in these groups. But that's what this list is. There's also a director's poll, which I find a lot more consistent with my personal perspective and taste. But the critics poll is the big one that gets the attention.
The AFI, I remember the 97 AFI that we watched on TV live.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't have a problem with that. I thought that was... There are things on it that I disagreed with, of course, but...
Yeah, for sure.
But I found it very entertaining, and
oh, absolutely.
It had a really good reasoning behind it all, and it was very selective, like it was only American film,
mm-hmm.
which was fine. And
because that is the structure of it.
That was so everybody knew what they were getting into. I think Kane was number 1, Vertigo was number 2, but I think it was like 25 or 26, like Pulp Fiction showed up.
Right.
And that kind of, I remember even at the time, everybody was like, wow, like even us in the room, like that was the only film in the 90s, I think.
That made it there.
That made it into, you know, and that was a big fucking deal.
And that to me is one of the major quibbles I have with the current BFI list.
Yeah.
Is consistent with that. It's not the Pulp Fiction, it's that recency bias.
Yeah.
But go on.
Well, in that case, to hit on that, like it was Rolling Stone released 100 greatest songs of all time last year.
Talk about it, a completely impossible list.
Yeah. Much like you were saying, it's subjective and everything else. But I mean, that list was batshit crazy. The 20% of the list was in the last 20-something years. We're struggling with how do you rate songs? How do you judge a song's income?
Mm-hmm.
How do you chart a song or judge a song's charting in the age of stream? We're dealing with all these types of things. We're dealing with bands like the Eagles sliding down the list when bands that are coming nowhere even like a tenth of their sales target ranking way, way, way high.
Okay.
And that's never an arbiter of taste or
No.
good or what have you. But
in fact, an argument could be made the opposite.
It's true. It's true. It's very true.
But you need to have some kind of cultural awareness, and sales kind of indicate a cultural awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, the Beatles sold a shit ton of records.
It only got 4 Grammys.
Right.
You know, right now Taylor Swift has like 7 times more Grammys than the Beatles do.
And she seems to be exceptionally talented.
She seems to be.
But she is certainly not 7 times the artist of the Beatles, in most people's opinion.
People my age in 1968 knew a lot of Beatles songs.
Mm-hmm. Of course, there was a lot less songs to
I don't
know.
know any Taylor Swift songs.
Shake It Off?
No.
You've heard it.
Wouldn't identify it as hers.
That's plausible, but I bet you've heard it. But yeah, I know the feeling, because it's who's another band? Golly, since I'm so not in touch with today's music, there was somebody that mentioned it's like I've never heard of this band.
But she seems like a rock pop type of artist,
country pop
would be like in my wheelhouse. It would be like someone that I would know, pay attention to, listen to.
Yeah, but the
on
delivery
the radio.
system is so different now.
Quite possibly that could be it.
You don't listen to the radio. You don't watch the MTV.
No.
You know, the monoculture had its problems and its huge benefits, right? So there's no monoculture anymore. It's all splintered into so many different directions that the Beatles won't exist anymore.
That's right.
Now, there will be another band that's probably arguably as talented that shows up in the next 15 years.
It's possible.
But they will never achieve that attention just because of the splintering of our attentions.
I could go with that.
Well, at least I think. I mean, maybe not the Beatles, but you know what I mean. The Stones, at least.
Still going strong.
No. I'm just talking about from a artistic strength and popularity perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, the Stones, definitely
they could be matched.
3rd or 4th best British rock band of all time.
Yeah. I would say so.
Yeah, and could you see someone else getting to that level? Well, it's plausible. Maybe not rock band, because they don't. We don't have rock bands anymore, which is for the worse, of course.
Well, people said that in the 90s. People in the early 90s, people are lamenting the grunge movement and alternative. A lot of these highfalutin people on Rolling Stone and Spin are like, what is this shit?
Right.
And then along comes a band like Oasis, which, a lot of people, admittedly, like yourself, don't particularly care for.
Yeah, they're not my bag.
But they became very quickly
that huge
band, particularly in Europe. They were just unbelievable, and they hit the U.S. on their second album, Like a Juggernaut. And Rolling Stone just published an article last year about how they were wrong on Be Here Now, their famous third bomb.
Mm-hmm.
They released a third album, and it was supposed to be this huge deal, and it just bombed horribly. And Rolling Stone published an article recently that was, we were entirely wrong.
Retraction.
This was the album of 1997.
That's hilarious.
It just was. But that's... Rolling Stone was still written by guys who worked there in the early 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And Spin was still people who worked there in the 80s. And that's no bang against them.
Just reality.
Right. And so we're going to have the same, people. It just seems like a lot of people are sold on artists like Taylor Swift and artists like
Harry Styles,
who I don't understand at all, or Billie Eilish, who I own several Billie Eilish songs. I've listened to all of her first or second album.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's an extremely talented person, but I don't think she holds a candle to Linda Ronstadt, or that's just my opinion.
Sure, and it's not necessarily wrong, but it's not necessarily right either. But
right.
I know that she is important in the zeitgeist of the teenagers, or at least was about 3 years ago. Who knows? I mean, at this point, she may be completely discarded. I don't know.
The youth tends to rule because
at least
youth
from that
sells,
perspective, yeah.
Yeah, And I'm certainly not going to argue with that because we were young once. And
yeah, and it was so much better.
It was awesome. So Sight and Sound.
Yes. But they've released in December of 2022 the most recent listing of the it's probably a listing more than a ranking of the greatest films of all time.
And we're not going to go one by one through them, but
no, I wouldn't think so.
We're going to bring up things that pop out to us, like Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968, Italy, Sergio Leone. I like it. Henry Fonda playing against type. Charles Bronson and Jason Robards in the same movie. Claudia Cardinal. Lots of things going for this. I really like the format.
Right.
Top 100 movies ever? No. No.
It depends, right?
I mean, Leone made like 8, 9 films, and this is in his bottom 2.
Oh, so, I think that's probably a very uncommon opinion.
Really?
Yeah, I think probably most people consider Once Upon a Time in the West probably his top film.
What?
Yeah.
Above The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
You're probably looking from the Leone perspective at a shifting of 3, right? You've got Once Upon a Time in the West, Once Upon a Time in America, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. You're going to probably split that up almost evenly among people who consider what's the top. But I think Once Upon a Time in the West does have a very highly regarded reputation. I do think that it makes some sense. I don't know if I agree with it or not. You know, if we're looking at this kind of general time frame, almost revisionist Western, I'll take The Wild Bunch over any day of the week. But I think that your opinion isn't wrong, but it's probably not very common with a lot of the general admirers.
So the majority of Leone films thinks that this is his finest film. The majority of Leone fans.
I don't know if the majority, but a sizable enough percentage it matters.
Okay.
Because it is a sprawling epic. You are dealing with the things you just referenced with the casting against type, and we all know this is done by eggheads, and they like that type of things, and the subversion of Henry Fonda's image, and therefore it must be better. Blah. You know, and Charles Bronson, we accept this as a reality, as whether we agree with it or not. But I suspect that your immediate dismissal of that is probably worth reconsidering.
Huh. Well, right now I'm thinking there better be 1 or 2 Leone films above this.
And there's not. This is the only Leone film in the entire list.
That's fucked up.
Well, I don't know if it is or not. I mean, you're talking about over 110 years of cinema spanning who knows how many different countries.
Yeah.
Right? And part of their objective has been to expand the, quote, diversity, into quote, which is one of the problems I have with it, because I think that is artificially changing some things. But that's not even... I don't even know if I'm right, frankly. That's just my initial feeling, because, you know, I'm a conservative and don't like change all that much. But, no, I think that does make some sense. My biggest problem is, depending on how you look at it, number 95 or number 100 or somewhere in between, which is Get Out. And it's not Get Out as a film, but this list comes out every 10 years. Where this is probably my biggest problem with this list, is there are 4 films on here, which is 4%, that are from this past decade. And I don't know if anything, if you're releasing a list every 10 years, right, makes sense to have in the top 100 if it's within the past 7 to 10 years. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, there's a recency bias that I think is really problematic. You know, is Get Out, because of the 4 films from the 20-teens, is you have Get Out, you have Parasite, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and I can't recall the other one. Hang on one second, because I'll look it up real quick.
For our listeners at home, Dave actually put them all into a spreadsheet
Excel's
so
where it's at.
he could sort it very quickly for this conversation.
In Moonlight.
Moonlight.
Yeah, so those 4 films were all in the, quote, greatest 100 films of all time. Now, one of the things that for 2012 they released, and I assume they're going to do the same thing with 2022's list, is the top 250. They released the top 100 to say, oh, and then there's a 250. Right, which is, because I have some real quibbles, right? Because is Get Out a better movie than Lawrence of Arabia?
Fuck
I don't
no.
particularly think so, right? I really don't. I don't think it's got the staying power, although I think Get Out is probably one of those movies that I could see a compelling argument to be in the top 100 in 10 more years from now. I could see that argument. Whether I agree with it or not, I don't know, but I could see that argument. But that came out in 2017. That was 5 years ago. Is its impact as great as Lawrence of Arabia? At this point, it's yet to be determined, so therefore I don't think so. But with the top 250, is Lawrence of Arabia 101 and Get Out's 100? In which case, do I care that much? Probably not. But that's my biggest quibble, is that we have these 4 films that are in the top 100 that are within 5 to 7 years. I think that Get Out and Parasite are probably the 2 movies that have the greatest potential to retain some, slot in the next one.
Well, and you mentioned that, and it goes the other way too.
Mm-hmm. And there's some movies that totally deserve to shoot up the rankings.
Sure.
For sure.
But, like a couple of weeks ago, the Rewatchables did an episode on Eyes Wide Shut.
Uh-huh.
Eyes Wide Shut was just one of those films. The critics, before it came out, everyone couldn't wait for that fucking movie to come out. Like desperate. You and I waited for that movie for like 5 years to come out, and it was like a cultural, and then it came out, and I mean the critics were just, mixed, best. They were mixed. I mean, Ebert liked it.
It was a tepid response.
It was, and the audience definitely didn't like it.
I don't know if I liked it when I saw
it. Well, I mean, I've seen it maybe 3-4 times, and I'm not. You have to be careful when you say it's Kubrick's worst movie, because what is that?
Right. Probably one of those before Spartacus.
Right, which, I know that confused Kubrick, because people love Spartacus, and he's confused why people,
Spartacus is a great flick.
It's a great flick.
Is it a great Kubrick flick? I don't know, but it's a great flick.
Yeah. So.
Okay, continue though.
Well, I was just saying, like, that one's coming around. Like, I don't know if I'm coming around on it. Like, I'm going to have to watch it again to find out whether or not what Sean Fennessy and Bill Simmons were saying is true, which was this is actually a pretty good flick, and nobody gave it enough credence at the time.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that's a fairly consistent with my feelings when I see it again.
Yeah, I mean, it could be.
To a large degree, it reminds me a lot of Jackie Brown.
Right.
When Jackie Brown came out, I had these expectations that it wasn't shooting from my personal expectations, so I walked out confused and disappointed because I expected A, and I got something that wasn't A. So, but I've thought about that one probably as much as almost any Tarantino flick. It's like, okay, well, I need to revisit it, and who knows, maybe it'll be one of my favorites.
My son, he watched them all, and he thinks Jackie Brown is Tarantino's best film.
I can see a compelling argument.
Like you say, he doesn't have that baggage.
Right. He didn't walk into it saying, I'm expecting Pulp Fiction Part 2.
Right. Well, and how exactly do you follow a Palme d'Or from Cannes on your next film?
Maybe this is as good a choice as any. But, okay, back to the list.
Yeah, so
all
back to the list.
Scroll up a little bit.
To
this block of 6 that all tied at 95. Right, you have A Man Escaped, Once Upon a Time in the West, Tropical Malady, which I don't know at all.
Yeah.
Black Girl, The General, and Get Out. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that this is one of the things that I find, let's go with interesting. Well, I mean, and I'm not. It's not a critical thing, right? It's an interesting thing, because Black Girl came out in 1965?
Yeah.
All right, so it wasn't on the BFI top 250 of the critics. And all of a sudden it jumped to 95. Doesn't mean it's not deserving of that spot. It's just an interesting thing to note. Right? I think maybe The General wasn't on the top 250 either, and it jumped to 95 or 97 or however you want to rank these things. I know that Man Escaped, I believe that Once Upon a Time in the West, Once Upon a Time in the West was actually listed at number 80 in the 2012 list.
So it slipped down.
It did slip down, right? Which a lot of the Westerns, I mean, there's quite a few Westerns that...
People don't like Westerns anymore.
I know, and I don't know if that's
the theme.
For the best or the worst or whatever, but it's a reality, right? Tropical Malady, don't know at all. I don't believe that was ranked. Of course, that was from 2004, so it probably wasn't because recency bias. They probably followed my basic chain of thought that, if 2012, it was 2004, it probably shouldn't be in the top 100 or even 250. So that grouping, though, I mean, the only one I really have a problem with is Get Out, and primarily, if not exclusively, the recency bias.
Yeah.
Because I find it fucking absurd that a movie from 2017 is in the top 100 of all time.
You have to be careful with... I mean, the recency bias is very important. I mean, I want to do an episode one of these days about how the Oscars just don't work. Particularly after, 1965.
Yeah, that's probably accurate, yeah.
And we talked about before about how, the big picture should be separated from another
I
category.
like that idea. You had an idea that you floated out there. We're having essentially an audience award.
Yeah, Grand Prix.
I think that was a tremendously good idea, actually, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It seems like it's more needed, particularly after probably even 1975, when you have Jaws and then what wins Best Picture, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Okay, that one makes some sense to me. I don't know if I agree with it, but it makes some sense.
Or 1980, where Ordinary People wins over Raiders of the Lost Ark, which
things
people
like
don't
that
even
go. Okay, that's weird.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't even nominated. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right, or Forrest Gump wins over Saving Private Ryan.
Right.
Or in the same year, won over Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Or 77, where Annie Hall won over Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which one's going to make a bigger impact on pop culture, movies?
Well, industry? It's not just the impact on pop culture.
No, certainly not.
But pop culture changes society.
But it's one of those things where, the Grand Prix, it makes some sense to have that type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, is Top Gun Maverick the best movie of 2022? I don't know. It might be. But it is one of those where, if you have something like that, where it's not in the same competition as some of the other films that are going to be nominated, which are undoubtedly tremendous, it's just aiming for a different objective.
Right.
Right. Avatar, Way of Water, Top Gun Maverick, things like that. It almost makes more sense to have them in competition with themselves as opposed to some of the other ones. It's like Spider-Man No Way Home. Was that the most recent one?
Yeah.
Okay. Should that have been in the Best Picture race? Probably not. But I could see where it would have been nominated because it was a huge crowd pleaser. But going up against Coda and Power of the Dog and some of the other, it's just a different objective. And rewarding it differently makes some sense.
Most of those pictures that were nominated, people had never even seen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big problem with the Academy.
It is a huge problem. But it is also one of those things where the audience is bringing on themselves.
And I know that we'd live in a different era, but we talked about this before offline where the Bridge over the River Kwai, it was an enormous cultural event. It was a movie that a lot of people went to. It was heavily nominated. Mm-hmm. It was very well loved by the audience, by the critics, by the Academy, and it won Best Picture, 1958, I think.
Somewhere in that range,
yeah. And that was a movie that sort of hit all the goal markers, and it's like you can't do that again. You really can't. Most of the people,
unless you're talking about Top Gun Maverick.
Right.
Which is probably
Top
not
Gun
the
Maverick
same.
will never be nominated, never be
I bet you it gets nomination for Best Picture. I really do. I think it's actually going to get it. I think it actually is. But it's an outlier.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like Mad Max.
Yeah, Fury Road was nominated.
It's an outlier.
Yeah,
it's
an outlier.
It's one of those things where it's so well done that it may get a different... Of course, then again, we're also looking at... They're nominating 10 movies as opposed to 5.
Yeah, they had to open it up.
I don't think
because they had to... Because they can't...
It was all because of The Dark Knight, which is the exact same thing.
You know, I'm surprised that fucking Godard didn't have a film in every Best Picture category every time he released a movie. Because
he probably did from Best Foreign Film.
Probably, yeah. It's just getting that narrow, in my opinion. It's getting.
Sure, I know.
2019 was like the last year that I remember where like all these very popular.
This will be an interesting year.
Films.
Of course, past 2 years are kind of asterisk-worthy.
They're wacky.
So this year will be really interesting because I wouldn't be stunned if Top Gun and Way of Water get nominations. They may not be, but I wouldn't be stunned if they are, especially with 10. Okay, but continue on with the list.
Continuing on, we're finally getting down to the 80s. The Shining is 88, which, I mean, what do you think is Kubrick's best film? Because, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think it's The Shining.
No, I don't either, but I think Kubrick is one of the only filmmakers on this list who have multiple pictures. Kubrick has, and I apologize to
He
the listener.
better have something above this, like Dr. Strangelove.
I don't think Strangelove made it.
Fuck.
I think Barry Lyndon did, which makes you happy.
Jesus Christ. Are you serious?
I believe so, yeah. He's got... No, I apologize. No. He has 3 movies.
Okay.
Shining. Barry Lyndon. And you know what the other one is. It's top 10.
Full Metal Jacket? No. Oh, 2001.
Right. Kind of over.
How did I not?
Well, because you almost don't think of it as a Kubrick film because it's such a piece of the cinematic landmarks, you know.
True.
So I mean, he's one of the few ones that have multiple.
That I would choose that over.
Yeah, no, 2001 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
From an influence perspective and an impact, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
They're above The Shining. Yeah, I mean, I like The Shining. I just 88. I don't know.
Well. For a horror movie, an elevated horror movie, if you will. Okay, that makes some sense. 89, 88, somewhere in that range. Sure.
But the problem is, of course, is as you go down, you go to like 84, is your boy, David Lynch.
Yeah, and I don't think Blue Velvet should probably be on this top 100.
Well, it may or may not be, but is Blue Velvet... This is the problem that you get with any list.
Is it better than The Shining?
Is it better than The Shining? And I mean, I'm going to say no.
Well, no, I don't think it is. No, I don't think that it is. Do I think it's a more interesting movie than The Shining? Yeah. Can you have more conversations about Blue Velvet and its meaning than The Shining? Yes. No, I think you could. I mean, I don't know if... It's certainly not definitively, right? But is it one of those things where, okay, I can see... That being said, I don't think Blue Velvet should be on the top 100 because David Lynch has 2 movies in the top 100.
What's the other one?
We'll get to it. It's going to make you mad. But I think it makes some sense. I mean, David Lynch is probably...
Fucking Dune.
It is not Dune. It is not Dune, and it's not Wild at Heart. I put Wild at Heart over at 84. But hey.
Wild at Heart.
I love that flick.
Nicolas Cage does a great impersonation of himself in Wild at Heart in that movie.
That was before he was Nicolas Cage,
The Unbearable...
Lightness of Being? Or no,
the unbearable weight of massive talent. Yeah, he does an impression of himself in Wild at Heart. It is genius.
Woo! Yeah, I saw that flick in the theater, and it just blew my mind.
It was great,
in
wasn't
88?
it?
What was that?
Oh, Wild at Heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just went with a buddy of mine, and he walked out saying, what the fuck was that? I was like, I don't know, but I loved it. All right, but... Okay, so, I mean, these are some quibbles, right? Is Blue Velvet... Can I see a compelling argument for being on the same broad level as The Shining? Sure. Spirit of the Beehive, I haven't seen. I've heard it's tremendous. So I couldn't say.
Pierrot Le Fou is shit. I haven't seen
Look, 2 Godards back to back. History of Cinema and Pierre Le Fou.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either.
Sunset Boulevard makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
There's quite a few Billy Wilders. I think Billy Wilder's got at least 2.
Modern Times, 78. Well, I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember it being...
And it's one of those that, from an importance standpoint, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so...
Matter of Life and Death.
Yeah, Powell and Pressburger.
And I think that's the only one... No, they've got 2 on here. How many do they have?
I mean, I think that Black Narcissus is better than Matter of Life and Death, but this is one of those things where...
You're splitting hairs.
Yeah, I mean, you have to choose, like, what Powell and Pressburger,
right?
To use everybody.
And they've got 2.
And then it's kind of like, the Hayao Miyazaki,
this
Spirited
one I
Away.
Strange.
Not if you're a Miyazaki fan.
Well, okay, Miyazaki has 2 films.
What's the other one?
It is My Neighbor
Totoro. See, I wouldn't even...
Well, the thing I find very strange is I look at these and I say, okay, I've seen Spirited Away, very strange flick. Mm-hmm. I've not seen Totoro, so I don't have any opinion on it. But it kind of identifies to me as like, what's the point? How are people qualifying these things? Because having 2 animated films in the top 100, cool, no worries. I think there's only 2, and these are the 2, I believe. But I'm kind of surprised that these 2 would be on here as opposed to, okay, say Spirited Away and the one that I think makes a lot of sense on this list, which is Snow White.
Oh, just across animation.
I mean, from that
from that perspective, yeah.
It's like, okay, so is there a more important animated film in the history of cinema than Snow White? And the answer is probably no.
I think Persepolis, which is about 20 years old, I think it was 2002, 2004. It was about an Iranian girl who went to France. I thought that was an exceptional animated film. I like it way better than Spirited Away.
Right.
And I'm a Miyazaki fan. Like, I don't like all of his stuff, but like if I'm going to go with Miyazaki, I wouldn't go with Spirited Away.
What would you go with?
Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind, which I've covered on the Super 70 podcast.
Right.
And that one just speaks to me more.
Right. It works for you.
Yeah. And it's more of an action than, Miyazaki is also like Miyazaki's very metaphysical, and he's very metaphorical, and like he did his own version of, say, Alice in Wonderland. Mm-hmm. So if you do not know Alice in Wonderland's story, it just gets wild very quickly.
Kind of like Alice in Wonderland does.
In an Eastern setting, so you may not recognize it. Like, I didn't recognize it. And then somebody said, well, it's a remake of Alice in Wonderland. I was like,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So I understand there's a lot of it's kind of like, Kurosawa was doing a lot of Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah.
And there are a lot of people in Japan that were like, what the fuck is this?
But we like it because it's Shakespeare and it's
right. So they didn't particularly understand where it was all coming from. But to Western audiences, like, oh, okay. No, I get this. I understand this. This is King Lear. This is Macbeth or something. They get it. So you can, but a lot of his stuff is like that. A lot of it, not necessarily like copied, but
it's inspired, if you will.
Very supernatural inspired, I should say. And it's for animation. I don't think a lot of people can go there, including me.
Okay.
Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind is not supernatural. It's just an animated dystopian post-apocalyptic flick like Fury Road. Right.
But it is one of those where this is one of the things I noticed that the list I'm looking at, the way it was displayed on my computer, is slightly different years. Where Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro was back to back, 74 and 75, because I have sorted the list according to the way it was displayed on my computer. I just was struck by, okay, again, if you're going from an animated perspective, I'm not going to argue with these 2 at all, because I saw Spirited Away. I thought it wasn't my bag, right? But okay, sure. But not having something like Snow White or even Fantasia for that matter, is kind of shocking.
That seems kind of weird. Now,
but Snow White is one of those that it's like, okay, this was the first feature-length one.
Right.
And how are we looking at the 100 greatest movies of all time? Is there something that was more influential than Snow White? Since it kind of established this.
Snow White was pretty fucking influential.
Yeah, establishing it as a viable medium. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So that is where I started thinking about it. It's like, okay, what's the point of this list?
Well, and I get that. And when it comes to Miyazaki, the man's done great things for animation and
he's got a new one coming out next year.
Yeah, and he's old too.
Yeah,
I think that's his last. It's his last one. I think he retired.
I think he retired and then he came back for this one.
Okay,
but I don't know that.
But he's done so much for animation, but at the same time, it's like I'm not a huge fan of his work. Like I love Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, and I struggle to find another one that I like.
Gotcha.
Right, where when I look at My Neighbor Totoro or Spirited Away, I actually prefer something like, what's the one with the girl that can disappear? She's wearing the suit. They made a remake of it. Scarlett Johansson was in Ghost in the Shell. I thought that was an awesome animated film. I thought it was really well done. Or Akira.
Akira is probably...
Right? Like, why isn't Akira on this list? I mean, it's way better than Spirited Away. I know that there's some Miyazaki fans that spear me.
I don't know. I don't think... I think if you ask... I think Miyazaki is probably going to be... I think Spirited Away is probably going to be remembered a lot longer than Akira is.
Really?
Yeah, it's really kind of hit a... It's kind of hit a chord. Like,
well,
my daughter's generation, which is... God knows what it is. Generation Z? She's 25. What does that make her?
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they adore his
millennials.
Work. And she's never heard of Akira. I've introduced it.
Well, I mean, I saw Akira on re-release a couple of years ago with my son, and it was good. But I will say this. Every year at Cinemark, there's a Miyazaki festival.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks.
And people line up, and they sell
do.
out.
They do. And I go every year, and I see Nausicaa.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
And then you walk away and say, man, that was great. Love that.
So, okay.
Okay, so keep scrolling up the list.
Imitation of Life. Douglas Sirk.
Douglas Sirk. He's the only Douglas Sirk that made it in there.
That's the one that I would pick.
That makes sense.
That is an amazing film.
The Vegetables. The next one on your list. Hang on a second. And it does bounce around. Okay, so I'm in a little bit...
Andrei Rublev.
Well, it was one of those where I saw Sancho the Bailiff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's Kurosawa?
No, it's not Kurosawa. Is it Ozu? Oh, gosh.
No.
Mizuguchi. Mizuguchi? Okay. So I saw that. My son got that for me for last Christmas. He saw it and said,
Criterion?
Yeah. And he's like, okay, David. Because he thought, I think...
He saw it first.
He saw it on the shelf and he bought it for me.
Oh, okay.
Because he read the back and thought I'd enjoy it. And he's like, okay, we're going to watch it. I think he kind of anticipated it to be something along the lines of Yojimbo, some kind of samurai. It's not a samurai film, but let's watch it. That is a rough flick to walk through, but it is really good.
Oh, yeah. 1954, it's a rough flick to watch?
It's kind of depressing.
Pacing? Oh, depressing.
It's a rough
mood.
hang.
The mood is...
Yeah, it's just like, okay, this is... But it is a very good film. I don't know if I'd put it in my top 100, but sure, I'm not going to argue with it. So there's Totoro, So Andrei Rublev, Tarkovsky. How many films do you think Tarkovsky has on here?
Well, if I know the cinema-loving community, probably fucking all of them.
I think you might be.
I mean, is Mirror on there?
Mirror's on there.
Uh-huh. Is Solaris on there?
Solaris is not.
Shocking.
Stalker.
Stalker's on there, of course.
He is not your bag. I've seen Andrei Rublev. That is a... So he's got Mirror, Stalker, and Andrei Rublev.
Yeah.
And it is one of those where I look at it and I say, God, does it make sense? Should it almost be where you are disallowed from having more than one film in the top 100?
That's an idea, like a limiting.
Yeah, because I don't know. Because Hitchcock, I think, has 4.
Which 4 are those?
Well, you got Vertigo, you got Rear Window, you got Psycho, you got North by Northwest.
Okay.
And those are all no-brainers to me.
I would only choose Psycho.
Really?
Well, like we were talking before about like the cratering impact of pop culture.
Yeah, Psycho probably made the biggest impact.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, Psycho was a juggernaut.
Yeah, and it almost created a genre.
Right.
Right, which has got that makes it top 100 most important films of all time for sure.
Yes. Now North by Northwest is extremely influential
and entertaining as all get out.
There are parts in it that are very dry, and
I disagree.
I could not get through some of it.
I disagree. I think that's one of the most entertaining flicks I've ever seen. I think Rear Windows is best.
Okay, but so we have not touched a Hitchcock film yet, and I'm looking at the screen.
Oh, high up.
And number 63, Goodfellas.
Yes.
So all of Hitchcock's movies, including Rear Windows, better than Goodfellas.
Oh, I don't know if they're better than it.
That's
they're
just what they're
above it.
That's what they're above it. Like,
but
so
if you took, I mean, look at it this way again, because my initial reaction to a lot of this list was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me," right? But when you look at it and you say, "Okay, if you're going to poll 100 people of various ages, backgrounds, et cetera, just here in the States, right? So give me your 10 greatest flicks." You know, it's plausible where Goodfellas would have less.
10 greatest flicks. You poll 10 people, give me your 10 greatest flicks. Jaws is not on this list.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Raiders of the Lost Ark is not on this list.
Yeah, no Spielberg.
Star Wars is not on this list.
Star Wars makes sense. But Spielberg not being on here at all is
Empire Strikes
criminal.
Back is not on this list. That's the greatest movie ever made.
That's not true.
That is.
That's not
Empire
true.
Strikes Back
That
is
is
the greatest
not.
movie
That's
ever
your favorite movie ever made, but it's not the greatest movie ever made.
I don't know. Citizen Kane, Empire. I prefer Empire.
Sure, like I said, that's your favorite movie, but it's certainly not the greatest. I really like Empire.
Oh, man. I think it's better than Kane.
Okay, but
personally,
it's not.
With all due respect
well,
to...
it depends on how you define greatest, right? How do you define it? I don't know. All right, but...
That's another discussion.
You have Metropolis.
Yeah, kind of low.
Yeah, but at the same time, okay, it makes sense. It's in the top 2/3, or 3/4, almost 2/3. It's 67, so damn near. Makes sense.
Third Man.
But you have...
Not going to argue with that.
Tuki Buki, which is one of those where I've not seen, so I have literally no opinion on the film itself. I've not seen it.
Well, I think that in general, I've seen Scorsese here recently really push African cinema.
Right. And it's from, I think there's like 3 films or 2 from Senegal.
Yeah.
This is one of them.
Well, Black Girl's from Senegal.
Yeah, so there's 2 or 3. But it's one of those where it's like, Tuki Buki was another one that caught my eye, where it's like, it was in the top 250.
I'm going to point out and direct to you, sir, number 63 is fucking Casablanca.
Yeah.
Now, if there's any movie that needs to be above 75 or above 50...
I like Casablanca a lot more than 63. But it's at the same level on this list as Third Man. Does that make sense?
There are 3 movies directly below it I have never heard of.
Yeah, it's definitely something to me that's... The Third Man and Casablanca, to me, are absolutely 100% greater movies than La Dolce Vita. I've not seen Moonlight, but again, it goes back to that recency bias that I got a problem with. Daughters of the Dust, which I don't know. Insane Soleil, which I also haven't seen. I know of it. Is it better than Contempt? I enjoy it more. Is it better than Blade Runner? I think so.
Okay. Number 54. How many Godard movies are on this fucking list?
Godard's got like 4.
4? Yeah. Only 4? Okay.
Well, hang on.
I was expecting like 40 out of this community.
No. But it might be.
But I am impressed. Is this Ridley Scott's only film? Blade Runner?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, once again...
How many does Godard?
It is a film with a very mixed reputation.
Yeah, he's got 4. He's got Breathless, Contempt,
and Ridley Scott has we talked about this before, he has a very mixed output.
Oh, yeah, it's remarkably inconsistent.
I would like to know what version they think is number 54.
I'm sure it's
the final cut.
No, it's the one
theatrical.
No, what's the one before the final cut?
The international or the director's cut?
Well, it's probably the director's because you have the international. It's probably the.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is where we say, we're just a bunch of Edwins who admit that there's 4 cuts of Blade Runner and they're all very drastically different, and they've, I prefer the scene with the oysters in Spartacus to be cut in, and then it's a better movie. I mean, although we're splitting hairs,
we are absolutely splitting hairs.
Ridley Scott is a brilliant director. He's done. You could argue that he's done better films than Blade Runner.
I like Alien a lot more than Blade Runner.
Alien,
but I think Blade Runner's probably a
Black Hawk Down.
I enjoy that more than Blade Runner. Actually, there's a lot of Ridley Scott movies.
But again, in terms of Harrison Ford went to the Oscars. Was it last year or the year before? And he read this little cue card about this review that somebody had written about Blade Runner. And it was just horrible, but that was really the reputation it had at the time.
Yeah,
and it's had this again a cultural impact,
much greater than the other movies of his, which I prefer. Like, is Blade Runner more important than Alien? I think it probably is.
That's a tough call, man.
I think it probably is.
Alien is so influential.
Yeah, but I think Blade Runner's more so.
I mean, I know the Alien is basically Jaws.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get that. Blade Runner is new.
Yeah.
A future noir.
I mean, it's not.
It deserves a place on this list, I think.
There's a compelling argument for it. It makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense.
But, it's gone up because in the 2012, it was 69.
Now, I also tell you that if I were Ridley Scott and I were looking at this list and somebody put me right next to
Contempt?
Eisenstein.
Oh.
For Battleship Potemkin, I'd be pretty fucking happy.
I'd be pretty stoked.
Brian De Palma would fucking kill people.
Yeah.
With a knife to be ranked right next to Eisenstein.
And Potemkin is one of those where it's unusual because in the 2012 it was ranked at number 11.
Contempt is shit, by the way. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Hey.
Technicolor shit. I've been drinking. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
I'm going to have another one.
If it makes you feel any better,
we're past
Contempt was ranked number 74 by the directors. The Apartment, Sherlock Jr., Ali.
Well,
Furies
I mean,
the Soul.
So I was going to say, when I saw The General, and I've covered The General on the Super 70 podcast. And The General is a fun movie. I really like it, but Sherlock Jr. is better.
I've heard that, yeah.
So I was actually, so when I saw The General, I was like, well, there's not another Buster Keaton on this list.
Yeah, I think that's the only one that made it.
And to see Sherlock ranked higher than The General, it does give me a little bit of faith. I mean, somebody's paying attention.
Yeah.
Might be 1 out of 10 people, but... The Apartment. How many Billy Wilder movies are there on this?
I think there's 3.
Okay, Some Like It Hot.
Sunset
Boulevard. Yeah, The Apartment. What's the third one?
The
Apartment, Sunset Boulevard, and Some Like It Hot. Oh, okay,
yeah.
Okay. So I got it right.
I believe you.
So that's not the one that I would go for.
Some Like It Hot.
Yeah, I don't like that film. I know I'm way outside.
What do you mean you don't like that movie?
No, I don't like that film. I'm outside on that.
What do you mean you don't like it?
Yeah. That's not the one I would go for.
But you didn't say that. You said you don't like it.
Yeah,
That's different.
I don't. Well, true. I mean, I wouldn't put that on this list as best Billy Wilder.
But do you not like that movie?
Yeah, not really. Not really. No. I mean, I like Marilyn Monroe in that film.
Yeah. You don't like Jack Lemmon or Tony Curtis?
No, I don't. I don't like the setting, and I don't like the setup, and I don't. I just the 20s on the beach in Miami, and
it's not my favorite Billy Wilder, but it's probably his greatest movie.
Billy Wilder did a movie that he shot in Germany with I don't remember who it was, Marlene Dietrich, and it was about this, this congresswoman who goes to Berlin in 1945 and tries to investigate what's going on with the American military effort there in a post-war situation. And, Marlene Dietrich's a singer. She's just trying to survive. So she has to, for lack of better words, whore herself out to get things that she wants and needs in order to live. And
I would have said use her feminine wiles, but whatever.
Yeah, you could say that. And like, who's going to argue with Marlene Dietrich? Certainly not me. I think she's wonderful in the film. I can't remember the fucking name.
I was going to say, what's the name?
I can't remember the name of it. 1948, 1949.
You must see a foreign affair. It is so romantic.
That's a really good picture. Awfully funny, you know.
Don't miss a foreign affair. Such a lovely, such a laughing. Very funny picture. Oh yes, very funny.
So where were we? Sherlock Jr., 400 Blows, The Apartment. So how many Godard movies? You already told me, like 16,000 Godard movies on the
somewhere
top.
between 4,000 and 16,000.
Okay. The Piano, number 50.
And see, this is where I start having some real challenges with this year's edition of the list, because you have The Piano at, let's just call it 51. And you've got News from Home by Chantal Ackerman. For several editions in a row now, there was a bemoaning of the editorial staff of the BFI, the Sight and Sound, where, okay, the canon was staying essentially consistent, and you weren't seeing a whole bunch of, quote, diverse and new voices. So they kept expanding the participants. So all of a sudden you're seeing a jump in this one, specifically female-directed features. Agnes Varda has 2 flicks in the top 100.
Okay.
Ackerman has 2.
Okay.
I think that Campion's got The Piano.
Yeah.
And there's a couple others. And this is not to...
Well, if I'm going to choose a Campion, I'd choose The Piano.
For sure, but is The Piano a top 100 of all time? In my opinion, no.
Okay.
Not even close. But okay, whatever. You know, I mean, that's why these lists are inherently silly, right? This is an opinion piece.
Right. I don't think that you're in trouble. I think it...
Well, I think it's... The thing that makes me wonder if I'm going to be in trouble is that I think there's this virtue signaling associated with this. Right? I mean, I just don't know if I necessarily buy it. Right? If you take the top 100 greatest films of all time, as a function of the film industry as a whole, should 95% of them be directed by males? Morally, probably not. But realistically, probably yes. And that's not, like I said, again, not to dismiss...
males make the majority of the output, so therefore the males would...
So it's not one of those things where these films, News from Home, The Piano, any of them, are undeserving of their place in the canon. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But there's this huge jump. News from Home wasn't in the top 250. And that was where I started noticing that I had a problem with this list. It was the films, the 4 films. This is 4%, so I'm not going to sit here and jump up and down and say, this is illogical and doesn't make any sense and is therefore invalid, because of 4% of the list is from the past less than 10 years, and that we have these appearances out of nowhere of these new films. They're not bad. I don't know. Not seen them. Couldn't say. But this is where I started having the problem. It's like, okay, are we actually looking at what's the greatest films, or are we trying to push forward an agenda?
Inequality, yeah.
Right. Are we valuing, quote, diversity and inclusiveness, end of quote, over
what is good?
Right. And that doesn't mean that. I mean, hell, I've never seen News from Home. I couldn't say it may be my favorite movie of all time. I'm not saying it's invalid.
And we have been talking about what is good, what is judged good.
Right.
Why is this good film better than higher up or down the list on this good film?
You have no use for Godard.
And we haven't been talking about gender at all.
No,
that's a good
gender
point.
Doesn't play into this. I mean,
yeah.
Well, obviously, what I'm saying is it does, right? Because I find it an artificial injection of a film based on the gender of the filmmaker.
Yeah.
Right. Again, I reserve the right to be wrong because I've not seen it.
Yeah, I remember telling you like 2 or 3 months ago about how Criterion just dumped, I don't know, like 20, 30 films by Varda, and I saw 4 or 5 of them. And I was
loved them.
Oh my God, these are really good. I wouldn't put him on this list.
No, I don't know. They may be well worth it. And if you have 1,000 people, Varda's stuff maybe absolutely.
Yeah, maybe you haven't seen one that deserves to be on the list.
But
yet.
I look at it and say, okay, well, if we were going to say, what's a list of the top 100 Westerns?
Oh, that's easy.
Top 20 Westerns.
Easy.
From the past 20 years.
Oh.
You know, if you said it 20 years ago, what would be on there? There'd be a list of blah.
Yeah.
If you did it today, would Power of the Dog be on that list?
Fuck no.
No, but would it be on the list, even though a lot of people would say, because
I mean, I could see other people wanting Power of the Dog on this list.
Right,
on a list like that, yes.
And that's where I start having the challenges with this list. Is like, is this authentic? Is News from Home going to be on the list in 2032? No clue. It may jump up tremendously. But I do have a certain degree of cynicism associated with this.
Yeah.
You know, it may be totally unjustified.
Well,
and is it one of those things where you're including new voices and therefore things that aren't normally in the canon are suddenly brought in? Yeah. And is that valid? Yeah, very well, it could be. Could be.
I think because we are film fans, we are by nature cynics.
Yeah, but these people are just as much a film fan as us, if not more so.
Right.
For sure.
That makes sense.
So, independent of that, there's another one, Wanda. I know Wanda is recently very well regarded. It's like almost recently discovered. Right.
Right. This is one of those
Wanda,
films like a Car Theodore Dreyer type situation where they found it in like a fucking closet in a sane asylum in Sweden or something like that. Yeah.
And Wanda in the 2012 list was on their 250.
Yeah.
It was 224.
Oh.
So it jumps from 224 to
48.
49?
49, yeah.
I mean, the more people see it, it's just one of those where I don't know. And I'm not trying to say it's not worth being there. It's just one of those where...
Well, and to keep things in perspective, Wanda's right next to Barry Lyndon, Battle of Algiers, North by Northwest, Stalker.
Your top 10. But, I mean, it's one of those where
I love the Battle of Algiers.
These are just one of those that I just notice.
And Barry Lyndon is, I mean, isn't Criterion putting that out?
They've put it out.
I mean, that
been out for years.
It's like the last one I'll buy.
Right.
I can't stand Barry Lyndon.
Yeah, and is Wanda a better movie than Barry Lyndon?
I don't know.
It's very plausible. It is very plausible.
And it's got to be better than Barry Lyndon.
It's absolutely possible.
Fuck, did you listen to the rewatchables on Barry Lyndon?
Mm-hmm. It was a very strange selection.
It's fucking bizarre.
No, it wasn't the rewatchables.
Was it?
No, it was...
Somebody did an episode on it.
It was...
was it the other one?
Griffin and David.
The Big Picture?
No.
The what?
It was... shit.
There's another one you and I listened...
Check.
Huh?
It's Blank Check.
Blank Check.
Yeah, Blank Check did it.
Okay. That was fucking just weird. Just weird.
There's a lot of people who love the Barry Lyndon, apparently.
Who are these people?
I don't know. They like the natural lighting. Okay, but North by Northwest, Battle of Algiers.
I think I'd rather have another colonoscopy than sit through Barry Lyndon again. Okay, we're not going to talk about Tarkovsky anymore.
No.
I haven't seen Bicycle Thieves.
No, but Bicycle Thieves, based on its reputation, makes sense to be there.
Yeah, Rashomon, personally, there's way better Kurosawa films.
No, but it makes sense.
But it makes sense that it's on here, yeah. A Buddha Souffle, we already did that last year.
Not a fan. Something Like It Hot, we've already discussed.
Yeah. Rear Window.
That's my personal favorite Hitchcock.
City Lights. Okay. M. Strong.
Yeah.
Deserves to be here.
Panther Pancelli. I've not seen any of those.
8.5 is good. I haven't seen Mirror yet, but like judging on my history of Tarkovsky,
You're not feeling very confident.
Yeah.
That'll be your gig.
Portrait on a Lady on Fire. Like I bought it on Criterion because I understand it's a very good movie.
This one is probably the most banana selection to me, period.
I haven't seen it, but my son says it's really, really good.
I'm sure it's I'm sure it's excellent. But it was released 3 years ago, and it's the number 30 film of all time.
It was nominated. So, but here we get into it. Like in front of it, Psycho. Behind it, Taxi Driver.
Right.
Like.
Well, I mean, if you just look at this placing, a movie released in 2019.
Yeah.
Is the 30th best film of all time?
Yeah. How can you?
That's impossible.
How can you know?
That's literally. There's no fucking way.
It might be in 20 years.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, but not.
Right now, it's better than Breathless.
No,
I mean,
it's not more influential.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it is definitely not more influential.
And that's one of those.
There's
things
no way.
Right, and that's one of those things that when I hear greatest films, I think of influence.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's impossible.
Showa. Glad to see Showa's getting respect, but I mean, quite honestly, too high.
Well, it's one of those things. I don't think any documentary should be on this list.
Narrative only.
Well, how do you compare a narrative and documentary? Which one's? It's an impossible thing. It's like you don't rank books by fiction. You don't mix fiction and nonfiction together in books. At least you shouldn't.
It's very difficult to judge fiction and nonfiction.
Different criteria altogether.
Yeah, like my favorite novel of all time is probably The Razor's Edge by W. Somerset Maugham.
Have you seen the film adaptation?
Well, not the 40s one, but I've seen the 80s one.
With Bill Murray?
Yeah, I love it.
I've never seen it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I love it. And Murray's like fish out of water, like he doesn't belong. But by the end of the movie, it makes sense.
It makes some sense.
Yeah, I think that was like his only drama. He didn't do another one for like 15 years or something. Like
Boy,
Broken
I'm
Flowers
sure that,
or Lost in Translation. Or something.
I'm sure Lost in Translation is not his next one, but it sure feels like it.
Yeah. I mean, Razor's Edge is deadly serious. And it is a drama. And he does look like, in the first hour, he's like really uncomfortable, for sure. But I love it. Anyway, what I was getting to was, like, there's this famous book by William Mills Shearer, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've heard of it.
Yeah, 1960.
It's like popular and stuff.
It's very popular. I read it when I was a kid, and they just put it out again, some whatever edition, and a relative of mine found it and bought it and gave it to me for Christmas. And just immediately I just start reading because it's just so fucking good. And putting that on the same, is that better or worse than The Razor's Edge? Like, that's
tremendously different.
I don't,
Again, different objectives.
Yeah. Well, and even something more fun, like another one that I really love is Youth in Revolt by C.D. Payne. That's a phenomenal fiction book. And off the top of my head, probably better than Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. But what right do we have to rank those?
Right. That's why it's like, so the biggest problems I have with this list really are the most recent films and the handful of nonfiction or documentary is probably a better way to put it. I just don't think they jibe. Because that's like, I think between those two, you're looking at 4 from this. You probably got 4 nonfiction, or 4 nonfictions, or maybe 3, or nonfiction is the right way to put it. But Showa and Man with a Camera, and there's a few others. Like, so I would immediately eliminate those.
Man with a movie camera's on here.
Hmm? It's always on here.
It's Vertov, isn't it?
Yeah. So you got.
He was amazing. So.
And Night of the Hunter. 25.
Yeah, I didn't particularly care for
I'm
that.
still baffled by that.
Yeah.
Do the Right Thing totally makes sense.
I mean, I like Do the Right Thing, but like when it comes to Spike Lee, it just, Malcolm X is like the magnum opus of his career.
But I think Do the Right Thing is.
I'm not saying it's not good. I just, if I were to choose a Spike Lee movie to be on this list, it would just hands down.
I think
Malcolm
Do the Right
X.
Thing is probably a more important movie than Malcolm X.
So in terms of cultural impact, like
and
we
that's
were
the way
saying
I'm
before,
judging the greatest, right?
Yeah.
And I don't
Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Do the Right Thing.
I think it's more.
Do the Right Thing was huge.
So, I mean, and this one is one of those that jumped tremendously. Went from, what was it on the previous one?
And it crossed the spectrums,
46?
too. Like, you talk to Kevin Smith, and, like, Do the Right Thing to him was enormous.
And Do the Right Thing, I remember seeing that in the theaters, and it's one of those where what I really liked about it is that it was a message movie that was multiple messages acting concurrently, right?
Such as?
Well, who is right and who's wrong? I have no idea.
Oh.
There was compelling arguments for all parties involved, right? Because one of the biggest conflicts is, what artist should be on the wall in Sal's Pizza Hut? There's good arguments for both sides. I think Buggin' Out's argument is nonsense. He has no ownership on the place. It's a place of transactions. I give you $5, you give me a slice of pizza. I can put whoever I want on the wall. You have no right in that because this is our relationship, right? But I understand Buggin' Out's perspective as well, even though I don't agree with it. I get it. It's like, oh, you're in our neighborhood. You are making money on the population, and we deserve a piece of representation. I don't know if I agree with it, but I get it. So, I mean, it was one of those where it's like Mookie throwing the trash can through the window. Was that justified? Did it make any sense? I'm still unclear on it personally. But it was a message movie for sure. Mm-hmm. But what was the message? You could read it any way you wanted. Whereas usually with, quote, message movies, they're banging you over the head. You must feel like this. And this movie was not like that.
Yeah. I recently listened to this 6 or 7 part episode of a podcast. I'm sorry, I can't remember. We listened to so many podcasts. I was trying to remember. It was about Crown Heights, the riot in Crown Heights. Mm-hmm. And it just sounded like Do the Right Thing. I think it took place like 4 or 5 years before. Mm-hmm. And you just listen to it, and you just really do understand what everybody was so on all sides was upset about. It's just too bad that you couldn't come to a resolution. You see that and Do the Right Thing. Like one of the most shocking things about that particular film, and I'm sorry to slow everything down, was at the end, like Mookie's hanging out with Sal on the steps, and Sal pays him.
What's that?
Sal pays him like
they
money.
Never had a bad relationship. I mean,
right.
Sal and Mookie always had a very good relationship. And this is why I think it deserves to be up here as opposed to Malcolm X, because how long of a conversation would we ever have about Malcolm X?
I mean, I don't know. Like, you and I probably. I don't know.
Not the person.
Yeah, the movie. I see your point because the issues that we're going through.
Yeah. And Malcolm X is an argument to be made that is Spike Lee's best movie is probably very valid.
But like you were saying,
what's the most important one? Yeah. I don't know if it'd be that.
Out of those two, Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, so I that's where I go, okay, it makes some sense. And top 25? Yeah, it totally makes sense. Okay, but definitely top 100.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Playtime, I've not seen it. I need to see the Tatis stuff. I've not seen any of them.
Well, as we go up, there are more and more that we have not seen.
I've seen a decent amount of them. Well, okay, no, that's not accurate.
Joan of Arc.
I've seen Passion of Joan of Arc. That 20. Is actually shockingly good.
Apocalypse Now, number 19, kind of low.
I don't know. I think top 20 makes sense.
Persona and Close Up have really edged up the past 20 years.
I think 7. Well, Persona's interesting because it's only Bergman.
Yeah.
Close Up, I've not seen it, but I've heard it's excellent.
Okay, Meshes of the Afternoon.
That one's weird. I don't know that movie at all.
I've seen it twice.
Okay.
I saw it when I was in grad school 20 years ago. And it was just like, I was thinking, you need to like eat mushrooms, drop LSD, or smoke some serious indica before you watch that. And I just kind of like, okay, well, it's a woman in the 40s. There's not a lot of women in the 40s directing shit like Ida Lupino, people like that. And so that's why it's whatever. So I watched it again, 2-3 weeks ago. I forgot to put it on my Letterboxd. I was really blown away by it.
Yeah.
I liked it quite a bit.
Well, that's why I was very hesitant about my previous criticism.
But you haven't seen it.
No, I'm talking about my previous criticism of my statement of some of these films getting vaulted up.
Right.
So it's one of those where I've not seen some of those flicks, so I can't say definitively. I just find it interesting that all of a sudden went from not on the radar at all to top 30. So I've not seen this movie. I've not seen it, so I don't have any opinion.
I mean, I think it's high.
Would you put it at number 16 of all time?
No. Easily.
Would you put it top 100 of all time? You could see an argument for it?
I could see an argument for it. I don't think
you wouldn't put it on yours, but
okay. Yeah, 250 maybe. Yeah,
but would you? Yeah, 250. Yeah, and that's one of those things where we are at a disadvantage. They haven't released the 250.
The Piano is a better film.
Okay,
The Searchers.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's right where it needs to be.
Too low.
Too low.
Too low. There's the other one of the other two or three Vardas. Cleo from Five. Haven't seen it.
Yeah, there's something I like about Varda. I don't know what it is.
Well, she's very much a humanist director, from what I understand, and that her stuff is actually excellent.
Very approachable.
Yeah,
very approachable. Unlike Tarkovsky.
Unlike Godard.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a good counter, right?
Yeah.
Rules of the Game.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
It's always there, though.
Obviously, The Godfather.
But no Godfather 2.
But I mean, when we were growing up, and maybe this is just my perception, when we were growing up, like all of my friends, we were always, greatest movies ever made. Godfather, Godfather Part 2, Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars.
Very narrow
Apocalypse
exposure.
Now.
Yeah.
It was always like those 5-ish, take one out, replace it with something else. But.
Sure, but I mean, very narrow focus growing up. Very, very, very narrow focus growing up, American male.
Yeah.
Very American white male in the 1980s and 90s. Okay, you're going to have a very narrow focus. Singing in the Rain, top 10.
Okay, so.
There's the other Lynch.
Okay, we're going to get to Lynch in a minute.
Okay, what were we going to say? Singing in the Rain, top 10. Have you seen Singing in the Rain?
Yeah, I've seen it twice. And, I mean, I don't hate it, but I think it's too high.
No, I think it's actually...
The first 90 minutes of Babylon is like 1,000 times better than Singing in the Rain.
That I find exceptionally unlikely. Singing in the Rain is a perfect movie.
Okay.
No, it is.
We'll see. Man with a Movie Camera, excellent film. Vertov, whose name I can't even pronounce his first name. He's one of 3 brothers who were doing this shit in early Kinoscope, Russia, and I really like Man with a Movie Camera. And I mean, one aspect is like you just see a lot of the Soviet Union that you just don't see before or after. But Vertov's technical skills really kind of like shine through. And I remember watching it, and I just remember thinking, I saw this clip before on the History Channel. I saw this clip before when ABC News was doing something. I saw this clip. It just seemed like everyone was scavenging it because it was filled with these moments that they thought were short and compelling,
Well, it was number 8 on the 2012, so I have no doubt whatsoever it deserves the top 20.
Yeah. And it might be like too high to me.
But
it,
that's
you
personal opinion type stuff.
But I would keep it like in top 25, top 50.
Makes sense.
Yeah, top 75. It's on this list. Mulholland fucking Drive.
Fuck yeah!
Has no place.
That's
anyone
not accurate.
Lists.
Unless
it's going into a garbage can.
No, that's inaccurate. I think that most people would disagree with that personal opinion.
I know that.
Is it deserved to be in the top 10? I think the answer is probably no. But top 100 makes a lot of sense, which is why I would bump Blue Velvet for sure.
For this.
Yeah. Now, Mulholland Drive, you drop that in 45 to 75, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Can you, sir, in under 5 minutes, explain to me the plot of Mulholland Drive?
No, but that's part of the appeal, right? It's kind of a fever dream of imagery that is, it links together very well. I think it really does work. I get your opinion. You're not wrong, right? But I think that it makes sense more than deserves to be.
I
don't know if it's number 8. I don't know.
Shocking, Moneypenny. Shocking. So, Beaucherville, have you seen this?
No.
Okay.
I have not seen. No opinion. Beyond, again, that... Well, in 2012, it was 6. And now it's 7. You're fighting with the microphone.
That's okay. It's my lot in life. It's not a lot, but it's my life.
There you go. So I've not seen it.
But you have seen 2001.
Seen 2001. I don't know if I'd put it at number 6 in my personals, but I get it.
I don't want to over worship Kubrick. I do appreciate his films. I love 2001. It is a perfect movie if there is one. That's when he entered his OCD stage.
Right.
I do in the top 10, top 20, 25, yeah. Top 10, but this and Barry Lyndon on the same list just makes me think that somebody is like ill. I have not seen In the Mood for Love yet.
No,
it's number 5.
I haven't either. I've seen it. I've got it forever. It's the same thing with the next one with Tokyo Story. Need to watch it.
Okay, well, I've got words on the Tokyo Story because when you and I talked about doing this like a week ago, I went on to Criterion and I loaded the whole everyone on this list that is on Criterion. I put it on my watch list. Yeah, they get a lot. They got
probably
almost
60 of them.
Yeah, I think so. And so I sat down and watched Tokyo Story, and I fucking fell asleep. I'm not kidding. Like, I was on the couch and nodded off. That's hard for me. I have sleep apnea. It's hard for me to nod off.
So, not your bag.
Woke up, watched the rest of the film, couldn't fucking tell you what happened. Not because I was asleep, because it was the most uninteresting drama I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And why it is number 4... I guess I could watch the 40 minutes I was asleep for, but if I don't think it'll make a difference, why would I bother?
Yeah. Makes sense. No,
it was also, I got to tell you this. It was like 2 people in a house talking about tea. Shot, reverse shot. Then talking about traveling somewhere. Shot, reverse shot. Very pleasant conversation. The entire movie's very pleasant. Like Pleasantville, pleasant.
Okay.
And this is how it goes, and this is where we go, and how's your tea? And talking about the relatives, talking about everything else, and I was like, holy shit. Like, I'm not waiting for like a huge mass murder or anything, but if
like
something
to occur?
Yes. I was waiting for something to occur.
And it never did.
Credits rolled is what happened.
You're like, oh, okay.
So Would I put that below Kane? Yeah. Would I put it
above
number 4? No, I would not.
I would put it above another 96 flicks. So now you get to the top 3.
The top 3 just. I'm going to try to hide my anger.
Okay.
I mean, remember, was it the AFI in 2007 when they decided Vertigo was in front of Kane?
No, that was BFI in 2012.
The BFI in 2012? Yeah. Okay. I mean...
Not the BFI. The participants in the poll.
Well, yes. That's true. But at the... Okay. There are severe problems in Vertigo that don't make any sense. The plot does not make any sense. And if you listen to the commentary with Friedkin, which one of the best commentaries that I've ever heard, we previously talked about this. Friedkin is very, very honest about, in this scene, Jimmy Stewart doesn't ask or say or any, like, these very obvious questions that come up to, it doesn't serve the story, so Hitchcock he just leaves it alone. There's very glaring loopholes in it. In Citizen Kane, there aren't. So just as a Hitchcock film, I get that Vertigo is like visually stunning because his films are. He's a technical master.
But it's not like Wells isn't.
Wells is a technical master.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's not like Wells is not.
Okay, yes, yeah. I'm not a big Kim Novak fan, but I don't really particularly even care about that whole debate. Some people get lost in it. Like, she's the worst Hitchcock blonde. Like, what are you talking about? Vertigo's so well-renowned. If you're going to choose a Hitchcock, I wouldn't choose Vertigo. I mean, I just think that Psycho is just so profound. And what it did in terms of impact.
Right.
I think it's way better than Vertigo.
Well, is it a more important film? I can see the argument.
Yes.
Like I say, it almost established a genre. I prefer Rear Window over both of those.
Okay.
Vertigo, I've seen. It's been a very, very, very long time. It's been at least 20 years.
Okay.
And Vertigo, to a large degree, I walked away saying, probably like you did. It's like, okay, that was fine. But I know that it keeps ending up here, right?
Yeah.
On the AFI, I know it was definitely top 5.
Yeah.
So I know that, broadly speaking, it's highly revered. And so I just need to watch it again.
Well, and I don't know.
It is one of those where, again, we're getting to the point where it's like, okay, so you have 3,000 critics. They write down 100, or they write down 10 films, and they tally it up, and Vertigo ended up on 1,000.
Yeah.
So it's not really I'm ranking these movies.
It's ranked choice voting.
Right. So it is one of those where, with any of these top 10, it's like, okay. It's like Jeanne Dielman. I mean, a lot of people were very mad about this.
Well, what the fuck is this movie? I've never heard of this movie until...
I've heard of it.
I have not. Who's the director?
Chantal Ackerman.
I mean, I don't think I've
not heard a whole lot of flattering thoughts about it. Primarily, it's 3 hours of her living her life.
Well, it sounds like Tokyo Story.
I based on what you were saying, yeah. That's what I understand it to be. It's like, okay, we have a single shot of her making a ham sandwich. And people are taking it and saying, okay, this is a representation of blah, whatever blah is. So I have my doubts that a lot of people would have said that's the best movie ever. But I think that a lot of people put it on their top 10 because, well, it's an important work by, a female director, and therefore it must be recognized. And I'm not saying that's wrong. That's why I hesitated there.
Well,
for
it could
quite a
be
while.
important, but
Yeah. So
is it a good movie? That's again cultural impact.
yeah, I think that Citizen Kane and Vertigo probably influenced a lot more films than Jeanne Dielman ever did.
That's the point where I was going to.
Yeah.
I have been obsessed with films since I saw Ghostbusters in the theater in 1984. I have spent the majority of my life rewatching films. I went to grad school and I majored in cinema history, and I watch like 30, 40 films a month. Most of the films I watch I've never seen before. I've seen more new films in the last 5 years than I did probably in the previous 20. I've never heard of this. I've barely heard of Ackerman, and I've never heard of this film. And I didn't even see it on the Criterion Channel.
It's definitely there.
And well, it is now because you can see it now because it's in the
Right, it's in the banner.
the Sight and Sound 100. Check these films out, and it's the first one up.
Because it's the number one film.
Because it's the number one film, yeah. But before then, I never saw it on the channel.
No, but it was there.
Well, because of the licensing, it's probably been there for months, but they
yeah.
haven't been promoting it. And if it is the greatest,
it's not been promoted. Yeah.
If it is the greatest film, if it's the number one film,
you would think that it would had a bigger place in the public consciousness.
Yes, you'd think that if Criterion knew that it was the number one film, that they'd be promoting it for the last 2 years that I've been a member of the Criterion Channel.
Right.
And it hasn't been.
And this is one of those where this is another red flag to me because it was in the 2012 poll.
Okay.
But it was 38. So it jumped from 38 to 1 in 10 years. It's
Remember, Vertigo was number 2 for like 4 decades.
Right.
And and when it edged Citizen Kane, people got pissed.
Right.
You know, it's like when people were saying like the Ramones and the Rolling Stone poll, the Ramones were better than the Beatles. People were like, what?
Well, the Ramones were better than Beatles, but that's irrelevant.
That's a separate argument. But it's not inconceivable to put the Ramones in the top 50.
Sure, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense.
Who the fuck is Ackerman? Like, I don't, it's not that I haven't heard of Ackerman before, but
Right.
And what astounds me, and I hate to belabor the point, but, what is not on this list? Die Hard. Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I don't think Die Hard deserves
Jaws.
This list. Jaws, in my opinion.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to bump 6 movies, 5 movies, 10 movies, whatever it is, Jaws would be on there. Lawrence of Arabia would be on there. Godfather 2 would be on there. I can't believe that. Because that dropped from Godfather 2 last time. Oh, what was it?
That's very difficult to deal with.
Yes. Godfather 2... Well, on the 2022 director's list, it's number 27. But on the critics list, it's off the top 100. Doesn't mean it's not 101.
So very quickly, let's go to the director's list.
Yeah.
We'll just do
The director's list is a lot more conventional. So from a director's perspective, 2001's the number one film. Okay. Kane, Godfather. There's Jeanne Dielman again. So, I'm not doubting that it deserves recognition. I'm sure it does. I've not seen it.
Okay. And judging that there's something wrong here, number 4, Tokyo Story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Ozu is more important than Kurosawa?
No. I would imagine that most people would not say that.
But they're ranking an Ozu movie that's boring as shit above something like Yojimbo, which is exciting and interesting to watch.
Did Ozu have... This is obviously not true, but did Ozu only have one great film? And Kurosawa had 10, and Kurosawa stuff just split the vote? No, but something like that is plausible.
Oh, like they loved this one movie and they all voted for it, but Kurosawa had so many.
Right. I mean, we had
That if they have 100 people voting, and they'll
Samurai, 20% went to high and low, so therefore split the vote. No, I don't know if anybody would say Ozu is more important than Kurosawa.
Fucking Fellini just shot up there like a mother.
He seems to be very much a director's director.
Of course, Tarkovsky.
Yeah.
Soviet distanciation. You know, Kiarostami's really been, but that's been like a 30-year thing. Kiarostami just over time, it's just been climbing. So it doesn't bother me.
No, me either. I have no idea. Not seen it.
Yeah, neither have I.
Taxi Driver 12. Barry Lyndon, 13.
Barry Lyndon. Seven Samurai. Bochavu.
Breathless.
Stalker. Apocalypse Now.
So here's a weird one. Woman Under the Influence. So there's no Cassavetes whatsoever in the critics, but he shows up at least once, and I think multiple times in the director's side.
Panther Patrol. I've heard of that movie. By Sanjit Ray?
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard that's the one to watch. Yeah. So
Mulholland,
I'm not surprised that that's here either.
Mulholland Drive is at 22, or tied for 22 with multiple. Raging Bull, not in the top 100. I think Raging Bull is absolutely deserving of the top 100 on the critics' side.
Andrei Rublev, isn't like the third Tarkovsky film on here?
Second so far in the top 30.
Okay.
Godfather 2, right there.
Goodfellas. Second Scorsese. Do the Right Thing. Man with a movie camera. I guess I need to see Ordet.
Yeah, I've not seen it, but it's consistent. Lajit, which is kind of an inspiration for 12 Monkeys, sort of.
Yeah. But it's still images. It's not, I mean, whatever. But I wouldn't, kind of like Meshes in the Afternoon. Like, it's influential, sure, because it's groundbreaking. It's not very entertaining. The cultural impact of Lajette, or the cultural impact of Meshes in the Afternoon,
it's non-existent.
Negligible.
At least from a conscious perspective.
Yeah. Versus Vertigo or Kane. So, Jeanne Dielman, where is that in the fucking popular conscious?
Playtime shows up again.
Another Fellini.
There's quite a few Fellinis on the director's side.
Well, he's always been he's well
regarded.
well regarded, like Godard. Come and see. That
one does smack me as kind of a.
That's a little high.
Yeah, it seems to be some kind.
But the Tarkovsky is really, really high. Psycho. See the 46. Like City Lights. I don't know. This is so frustrating. And you don't want to say stupid shit like, I mean, I read Sometime Somewhere, Movie Made America, I think is the name of the book, where it was like 70 or something % of everyone who saw a movie between 1918 and 1934 or something, like 70 something % of everyone who purchased a movie ticket saw a Chaplin movie.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I mean, we can argue that Chaplin is or isn't art or isn't good. He made some good films and some bad films, just like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like you were saying, like his cultural impact, long term, we still feel it today.
Right. Yeah. I mean, of the big three with Keaton and Chaplin and
Harold Lloyd.
Yeah, Harold Lloyd. I don't think Chaplin's my favorite of those three, but he's definitely the most important.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of a Buster Keaton type of guy. I haven't experienced Lloyd at all, but I also read. Did I when I was doing the research on the General,
Mm-hmm.
I read that, I mean, Buster Keaton was the movie company that was cutting the checks for Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. He found that their author found the revenue, and the revenue for Buster Keaton movies was like 10% of what Chaplin was doing. No, I'm sure that's not bad money.
No, it's probably just fine.
Right. But it put in perspective of like how huge Chaplin was.
Chaplin was definitely a populist filmmaker, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and again, we're back to the situation that we kind of hit on and touched on, which is the disconnect between what is objectively an entertaining film versus what the masses want to see.
Right.
Versus a fucking French film from 50 years ago that's 3.5 hours long that no one would buy a ticket for in a theater, even if they put it on the Grand Marquis in the middle of downtown Houston.
But don't disparage it too much because you haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it yet. It's true.
I tend to agree from a broad perspective, but I'm going to table it and like, okay, I'll see it one day. I don't think it's the number one of all time. I don't think it's number four. It's the director's side.
I think I have to see it so the next time we meet, I can trash it.
You'll have to.
But I don't want to go in thinking I'm going to watch this so I can trash this film. I don't want to look at film that way. I like to walk in surprised.
Sure.
I mean, when I turned on Tokyo Story's reputation is so high. I was expecting to like it.
But that's also one of those things where you can't get too upset over these things. I mean, they're inherently subjective and silly. Right.
I like that perspective. I want to keep that perspective. I will tell you, my son and I went to Babylon Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm.
We walk up to the Cinemark. On the outside of the Cinemark, it looks like a Mayan temple.
Pretty cool.
And I'm sure that Cinemark wasn't thinking this way. But I love the idea that I'm going into my temple.
Well, they may very well be thinking about it.
I hope so.
Well,
because that's... I mean, I don't want to get metaphysical, but I know that we've been drinking all night. I mean, that's where I go to pray.
Right. Metaphorically.
Metaphorically, yeah. That's where I go to be excited. That's where I go to cry. That's where I go to,
But it is one of those things you have to acknowledge that there's
nobody's
to a certain
dying
degree.
over
There's
this.
no right. I mean, there's definitely rights and wrongs. We know that.
Sure.
But, so it's like the Oscars, right? That's the only award show that really matters. And we all know the Oscars are nonsense. But it is one of those things. It's the only awards. It's the only awards that matter. What's more important, the Best Picture winner from 1994 or the Palme d'Or from 1994? Oscars.
That was Forrest Gump, wasn't it?
Well,
over Pulp Fiction.
Independent of what it is, that's the more important one of the bunch.
Well, you and I looked at the Cannes winners, the Golden Lion and the Palme d'Or. I think for like a 10-year period, we were like fucking lost. We're like, what are these films? Like, we know it's a European audience is different, but
there's a different objective.
Yeah,
but it is one of those things where, again, this is similar. It's like this is the only list that really matters, but at the same time, it doesn't matter at all. So can't get too upset about it. But it is interesting, and look what's there, tied with 46. Once Upon a Time in the West. Strange Love. Singing in the Rain drops down to 53.
So a lot of movies that we were saying, why isn't this here? They all of a sudden they start popping up.
Yep. Eraserhead, that's unexpected. But Fanny and Alexander, right? You got a Bergman there in the mid-50s.
Yeah.
There's your Meshes of the Afternoon in the mid-60s.
Blade Runner.
60s. Jaws. That makes a lot of
sense.
Jaws.
That's the first
ray of hope I've seen in this.
Mm-hmm. And Arabia.
Yeah, number 62, Lawrence of Arabia.
Searchers went from 15 to 72.
Dookie Bookie. The Red Shoes. Modern Times, 72. Blue Velvet.
Spirit of the Beehive, which always shows up.
Wild Strawberries, 72.
Couple Bergmans.
Yeah. The Seventh Seal.
Chinatown.
So, okay.
Yeah, so this one is a lot more conventional, and I can wrap my head around it a lot more.
Another Kurosawa. The Conversation, 72.
Mm-hmm.
Solo, 72.
No accounting for taste, apparently.
Holy shit. Who the fuck voted that?
Quite a few, apparently. You can click on it. They might actually tell you.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if the voters are released yet, but... Oh, isn't released yet. Find out who voted for the solo. It's on right there, that last sentence.
Yeah.
They do release it, though. That's a movie I've not seen, and I feel very strongly I'll probably never ever.
No, I remember, I was, I was into the Italian neo-realist movement there for a while. I saw 4 or 5 of them, and I thought, oh, these are really good, Swept Away and things like that. And I saw the Rossellini one on Louis XIV or whatever it was. I thought, oh, okay, all right. And I talked to you about it. I'm going to get this Solo. It's on Criterion. They just cut it, and you were like, good luck with that,
Have fun
dude.
with that.
I think you said something. I understand that it's not so much of a film as it is a bludgeoning. And so I took it home and I watched it, and I put it on eBay the next day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got rid of it. It's not in my collection.
Out of my life.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. Wanda?
Yeah, there again.
Potemkin is 93. I think that's low.
Moonlight, Parasite.
The Conformist. Hidden. I haven't seen that.
No, have I?
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is 93.
I find that very strange that that's up there. And
Throne of Blood is dead last.
Well,
something has to be dead last.
Well, if you look at this, and I calculate it up, I think there's 105 titles there.
That's a lot of titles.
Right. So, but it is one of those things where Eternal Sunshine kind of surprised me relative to, say, Pulp Fiction or There Will Be Blood. Or
it's not a single Tarantino movie.
Yeah.
On either of these lists.
Yeah. And it's hard to... obviously we're in the sweet spot of that age group, right?
Yeah.
But it is one of those where it's like, okay, Pulp Fiction specifically was significantly more influential than Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless.
Or a 3.5-hour French film that nobody's seen?
Except for probably Tarantino. I'm sure he saw it.
I guarantee you he saw it.
Yeah, him and Edgar Wright, they've seen it. I promise you, they've seen it. But it is one of those where those ones are surprising. No Spielberg on the critic's side is surprising. Jaws, okay, it's on the director's side. Could you make an argument for 3 or 4 more of them? Yeah. Because is Saving Private Ryan the most influential war movie of the past 25 years?
Yes, it has been.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But it's interesting. And we shall see what it looks like in 2032.
This list is crazy.
It is definitely that. But it's designed for that, right? You're supposed to have a conversation.
Well, it worked.
Yeah.
Where are we at? 2 hours now?
Yeah. 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Yeah. It worked. So, congratulations.
So we shall watch Jeanne Dielman and reconvene.
Are you seriously going to watch the show?
I'd watch it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of those that I got to figure out how and when. It's like, hey, hon, I'm going to watch a movie. What are you going to watch? Yeah, it's about a 2.5-hour movie about a French woman making a sandwich.
Well, we got to figure out how later. Never mind. Okay.
All right, man.
Well, do you have anything else to say about the Sight and Sound 100?
No, at this point, I'm tapped.
I think we've said enough. Well, thank you for coming on the Super 70 podcast and talking about film.
Actually, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.
Out.
Hey, loyal listeners. I just wanted to tag something on to the end of this just as an aside. We talk fast and loose on this program. I cite my works when I do commentaries, but most of the time the interpretations are up in the air when Dave and I are drinking for 5 hours straight talking about Mad Max and the BFI. You can hardly expect us to be spot on our recollections and citations. So, when we went over Shoah, I made a mistake. The survivor in question was Abraham Bamba, who was in Treblinka. He didn't see his family come into the chambers. He witnessed another barber cut the hair of his family before that family went into the gas chambers. I crossed this with another story of another survivor that was emptying the bodies out of a gas van during the early days of the extermination experimentation in Poland. That survivor's name was Michael Pachibnik. Now, don't look for any corrections if Dave and I get the wrong ranking on the BFI or recall an actor's name wrong or mix movies up, but I thought I'd record this correction because we all know there's a bunch of evil and racist motherfuckers out there that will point anyone making an honest mistake and saying, well, see, he's lying. Thus, the Holocaust did not exist. You know, I've seen those people. I've met those people. I know how they operate, and this is how it starts. So no one's going to be using my podcast to spread their fascist agenda. So I wanted to be clear about this specific topic, and out of the respect for the victims of the show, I felt a responsibility to correct myself. Thank you.
never begun by asking the big questions because I was always afraid that I would come up with small answers, and I have preferred, therefore, to address these things which are minutiae or detail in order that I might then be able to put together in a gestalt a picture which, if not an explanation, is at least a description, a more full description of what transpired. And in that sense, I look also upon the bureaucratic destruction process, for this is what it was, as a series of minute steps taken in logical order and relying above all as much as possible on experience, past experience. And this goes not only, incidentally, for the administrative steps that were taken, but also the psychological arguments, even the propaganda. Amazingly little was newly invented until, of course, the moment came when one had to go beyond that which had already been established by precedent, and one had to gas these people or, in some sense, annihilate them on a large scale. Then these bureaucrats became inventors. But like all inventors of institutions, they did not copyright or patent their achievements, and they prefer obscurity.
What did they get from the past, the Nazi?
They got the actual content of measures which they took. For example, the barring of Jews from office, the prohibition of intermarriages, the employment in Jewish homes of female persons under the age of 45, the various marking decrees, especially the Jewish star, the compulsory ghetto, the avoidance of any will executed by a Jew that might work in such a way as to prevent inheritance of his property by someone who was a Christian. Many such measures had been worked out over the course of more than 1,000 years by authorities of the church and by secular governments that followed in those footsteps. And the experience gathered over that time became a reservoir that could be used, and which indeed was used to an amazing extent.
You mean that one can compare?
One can actually compare. One can compare a rather large number of German laws and decrees with their counterparts in the past and find complete parallels, even in detail, as if they were a memory which automatically extended to the period of 1933 and 1935 and 1939 and beyond.
In such respect, they didn't invent anything.
They invented very little, and they did not invent the portrait of the Jew, which also was taken over lock, stock, and barrel from writings going back to the 16th century. So even the propaganda, were the realm of the imagination and invention. Even there, they were remarkably in the footsteps of those who preceded them, from Martin Luther to the 19th century. And here again, they were not inventive. They had to become inventive with a final solution. That was their great invention, and that is what made this entire process different from all others that had preceded that event. And in this respect, what transpired when the final solution was adopted, or to be more precise, when the bureaucracy moved into it, was a turning point in history. Even here, I would suggest a logical progression, one which came to fruition in what might be called closure. Because from the earliest days, from the 4th century, 5th century, 6th century, the missionaries of Christianity had said in effect to the Jews, you may not live among us as Jews. The secular rulers who followed them from the late Middle Ages had then decided you may not live among us. And the Nazis finally decreed you may not live.
This means that the 3 steps were, the first one was conversion.
Conversion,
the
followed by
ghettoization,
expulsion. And the third was the territorial solution, which was, of course, the solution carried out within the territories under German command, excluding immigration, death. Final solution. And the final solution, you see, is really final, because people who are converted can yet be in secret Jews. People who are expelled can yet return. But people who are dead will not reappear.